Okay, good afternoon and welcome. We'll get underway. Good afternoon and welcome to the December the 5th, 2017 convening of the Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals. A few house rules before we get started. If you have any kind of electronic device, anything that plays a ringtone, a chime, if you've got a pager, if you still think it's 1996, we ask that you please turn those devices at a minimum to a vibrate only, if not off position. Similarly, to the extent that you need to have a conversation with someone, we ask that you please take that conversation out the double doors to your rear. And the reason for those rules is pretty simple and straightforward. You'll note that there are a number of microphones which are arrayed around us up here, and those microphones are all very sensitive, not only for the purpose of amplification, but also for the purpose of recording these proceedings. And cell phones, pagers, and the like, conversations, etc., not only disrupt the general conduct of these proceedings, but also interrupt or interfere with the recording of these proceedings as well. To the same degree, those of you who are sitting forward of the wall above you, if you turn around, you can see that there are 1, 2, 3 video cameras which are mounted on the wall there behind you, and there are 1, 2 video cameras which are mounted on the wall up here behind us. Those video cameras are active and are recording these proceedings, both for live streaming via the website for the city's cable access channel, as well as recording these proceedings for subsequent tape delay broadcast on the cable access network, and recording these proceedings for all posterity for the city's YouTube channel. So cell phones, pagers, and the like also interrupt and interfere with that process as well. Now that we have that out of the way, we will be voting at the end of the day. You're certainly more than welcome to hang around and enjoy a civics lesson if you so choose. But if you've got other plans for this rather gloomy early December afternoon, that is quite understandable, and we can look to get you out of here as soon as we can so you can get on with your holiday shopping and the like. You can call into the zoning board office in the morning to find out how we ruled in your case. If you take out pen and paper, I'll read this number off a couple of times. The number for the zoning board office is 410-396-4301. The number again is 410-396-4301. You will, however, need to wait until you receive the formal written notice of the outcome of your case, which should be forthcoming in about 3 to 4 weeks, before you'll be able to get your permit. And we certainly ask that you please not build in the city of Baltimore without first obtaining all of your necessary permits. If you haven't already done so, if you're here in opposition to any case today, we ask that you please sign in on our sign-in sheet, which is being held up now by Mr. Baumgartner. The sign-in sheet allows us not only generally to know which cases have opposition and which ones don't, but also allows us to know who needs to receive those aforementioned written notices I just referred to. So if you're here in opposition, please make sure that you've signed in. In addition, we do have a couple of cases which are being postponed, and to the extent that you're here or have an interest in either of those cases, we need to know who you are and how to notify you when those cases are going forward, as they will not be going forward today. We'll generally be calling the cases in the order in which they appear on our docket after we first dispense with some preliminary issues. First, as I just mentioned, there are a couple of postponements today. 2017-436, 3327 St. Paul Street. That case has been postponed, as well as 2017-441, 223 West 23rd Street. That case as well has been postponed. So if you're here in reference to either of those two cases, we ask that you please make sure that you signed in on the signing sheet, and we'll notify you when those cases will be going forward, as they will not be going forward today. Next up are the cases which appear on our consent agenda, and our consent agenda consists of those cases where the zoning board staff has reviewed the files in these cases, and the board has determined that we have the ability to approve these cases on a consent basis. We'll call the consent cases together as a group. I'll call them, and as I do, please come forward, try to stay in line. I will try to stay in the order in which I've called you. First person will line up here. Everyone else will line up behind them down the dais. Once everyone is up here, we'll then get you all sworn in again as a group, and we'll call each case in turn. And as we do, you'll be given the opportunity at that point to have any information that you would like to have added to the record at that time. First case on our consent agenda is 2017-425, 1818 Alisana Street, Adam Carballo. Next will be 2017-428, 2322 James Street, on Nuyen. After that will be 2017-430, 1601 through 1617 Bush Street, Derrick Nursery. And then we'll have 2017-434, 115 North Monastery Avenue, and Scott. Two 2017-443, 7713 Overall Avenue, Ante Hill. And finally, 2017-450, 2412 Fleet Street, Ken Sakura. Okay, if all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands and be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, calling the first case on the consent agenda, 2017-425, 1818 Alisana Street, Adam Carballo. Afternoon, Mr. Carballo.
Afternoon.
Mr. Carballo, we have this as an application to construct a two-story rear addition at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Thank you. Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted this property is located in the Fells Point Historic District, and recommends approval of the application subject to the condition that all work is completed in accordance with an authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Carballo, those conditions stated by the planning department acceptable to you?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And is there anything that you would like to have added to the record this time?
Two items. I actually visited the DRC, Fells Point, and already submitted to an authorization to proceed to the DRC. They found in favor of my proposed addition, and I also have letters of support from adjoining property owners.
Okay. If you want to pass those up, we'll have those added to the record. Anything further?
That's it.
All right. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Good luck. Have a happy holiday and a happy new year. Next, 2017-428, 2322 James Street, on Nuyen. Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Your name, ma'am?
Fong Nugent.
Okay. And can you spell your name, please?
P-H-U-O-N-G.
Okay. And it's Nuyen, just as Mr. Nuyen's last name?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And we have this as an application to construct a one-story, one-car rear addition to this location. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And just so that we're clear, does Mr. Nuyen speak English? Is he a little uncertain as to his English ability?
A little bit, but not that much.
Okay. Are you able to translate for him?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Reporter, if we can have the oath for a translator.
What's the language?
Vietnamese.
Vietnamese?
Yes.
Do you raise your right hand?
Ma'am.
Do you swear or affirm to translate the hearing correctly from English to Vietnamese and from Vietnamese back to English?
Yeah.
To the best of your ability.
You have to say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. And Ms. Nuyen, is there anything that Mr. Nuyen would like to have added to the record at this time?
No.
No? Okay. All right. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application. We've determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal. Good luck.
We will.
Do that mean that special people will get permission to set up a garage in the?
Yes, should be receiving the written approval in about 3 to 4 weeks, but that should be forthcoming at this point.
So there is approval?
Yes. You'll need to wait until you actually get the written notice.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Take care. All right, next, 2017-430, 1601 through 1617 Bush Street, Derrick Nursery.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. You, Mr. Nursery? All right, and sir, we have this as an application to install 5 projecting product identification signs at this location. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department noted that this property is located in the Carroll-Camden Urban Renewal Area. The approval of this application will also require a waiver for that urban renewal plan. The department therefore recommends approval of the application, subject to granting of a waiver by the Commissioner of Housing and Community Development, as provided in the Carroll-Camden Urban Renewal Plan, which regulates the area in which this property is located. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Nursery, are those conditions stated by the planning department acceptable to you?
Yes, sir.
All right. And is there anything further you would like to have added to the record at this time?
Yes, we have 4 letters of support from the neighboring businesses and BDC memorandum in support as well.
All right.
They were granted a facade improvement grant, and this is underneath that.
All right. Anything further, sir?
No, thank you.
Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good luck and have a happy holiday and happy New Year. Next, 2017-434, 115 North Monastery Avenue, Ann Scots.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Ms. Scott, we have this as an application to construct a first floor rear deck at this location. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. And Ms. Scott, anything further you would like to have added to the record this time?
No, not this time.
Okay, zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Good luck. Have a
nice
happy holiday.
evening.
Happy New Year. Next, 2017-443, 7713 Overall Avenue, Ante Hill. Afternoon, sir.
Afternoon.
We have this as an application to construct a first floor rear deck at this location. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Mr. French, anything on behalf of the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Hill, anything further you would like to have added to the record at this time?
Now, is the address Everar, E-V-E-R?
I have it
Okay.
as Everall.
Okay, yeah, that's it, okay.
Okay. Everall Avenue? Okay. Anything further?
No, that's it.
Okay, zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Okay, good luck. Have a happy holiday and a happy New Year.
Same to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, 2017-450, 2412 Fleet Street, Ken Sikora.
Nate Prettle on behalf of Mr. Sikora.
Afternoon, Mr. Prettle. We have this as an application to construct a 2-story side addition and second floor overhanging rear addition with rooftop deck at this location. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. All right. And anything further at this time, Mr. Prettle?
Sure, I'll just add that both adjacent neighbors on either side are aware of the plans and don't have any objections.
Okay. All right. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we've determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Great, thank you.
Good luck. Have a happy holiday. Thanks. All right. Now we're going to deal with the remainder of our docket, which will include cases where opposition is signed in. And frequently we've found that opposition is the result of either a lack of communication or miscommunication amongst the parties. And it can be useful to offer the parties an opportunity to have a dialogue between themselves and see if they can't reach a a resolution of whatever differences they have between them. Obviously, if there are two differing or two sides engaged in a dispute, and they ask the board to resolve their dispute, one of those two sides is bound to go away disappointed with the result. So this is your opportunity to avoid that unhappy fate. I'm going to call the cases off where opposition is signed in. You can just stand where you are. I'll ask you if there has been any discussion between the parties and whether or not the parties would like to have a dialogue now to see if they can resolve their differences. You, of course, don't have to take the opportunity to speak with one another, but we certainly do encourage and appreciate it. If you do decide that you would like to have a discussion, just step out the double doors to your rear, and once you're done, just come back in, and we'll call you in turn then. 2017-420, 2511 East Fayette Street. Okay, and folks, you can stay where you are, but ma'am, you can stay where you are. Have you had any discussion with the opposition in this case? The community association and?
No, we already.
I'm sorry?
We're already done with discussion.
You've already had the discussion? Would you like to talk now with your opposition?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Ma'am? Okay, if you want, just go out the double doors to your rear, see if you can get anything worked out, and if not, just come on back in and let us know. Okay, 2017-431, 1703 Desoto Road. Okay, and folks, have you two had a discussion regarding this case?
It's useless.
Okay, have a seat. 2017-444, 5616 Bel Air Road. All right. And have you folks spoken with one another?
Not about this particular matter. I think the discussion time is over between the neighbors and the bar.
Okay.
The sign was taken down, and the owner, the neighbors had not enough time to respond because we thought it was canceled. The sign was removed after 2 days, and there came the problem that this was still going on. So I can't speak for all the other neighbors that wanted to be here.
Okay, why don't you folks have a seat? 2017-446, 1426 Druid Hill Avenue. Dan Medvidi. All right. And folks, have you had any dialogue
Yes.
We have, yes, sir.
with the opposition, with the applicant?
Yes.
Yes, we have. Mhm.
Okay, all right. Any hopes of a resolution today?
Not today. We have tried to negotiate openly and honestly. We've been told that there are no further compromises to be made, and therefore, we stand in opposition.
Okay. And sir, is that where you stand today?
I'm happy to continue the dialogue, but I share his assessment.
Okay, all right. Have a seat. All right. Since it sounds like we have a preliminary issue with this matter, we'll call 2017-444, 5616 Bel Air Road. All right, folks, you want to come on down, and there's one microphone for each side there. Okay. All right. And sir, if you could help me out here, pronounce your last name.
Dhall, Dhall.
I'm sorry?
Dhall. That's John. He's gonna lease the parking lot from me. I'm the owner of the property and an existing business.
Okay. All right. So you're not Mr.
John, he should be here anytime
Echo
he was
Holman.
parking.
All right, and what's your last name, sir?
DHALL, Dhal.
DHALL.
Dhal, yes.
Okay.
And first name is Sumit, SUMIT.
All right. If all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands and be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, and, all right, we'll start first with the opposition since they've raised an issue here about posting in the property. Ma'am, what's your name?
Tammy Dwyer.
All right, and sir, your name?
Timothy Dwyer.
All right. And Mrs. Dwyer, you were saying that there was an issue regarding the posting of this property.
Posting of the sign was removed when the neighbors came back to take them back. The sign has been removed. We have taken pictures of where it was taken down from. The other neighbors thought that it had been postponed, delayed. You've created a problem. We have an assisted living place there. They can't just pick up and come, and when they have to take care of their patients. A daycare that has 8 or 9 children cannot just, they need to have time. It was gone. The sign is gone.
Okay, so.
I do have a petition that we went to all the neighbors last night to have them signed. They wanted their voices to be heard, but there was not enough time to make arrangements.
Okay, so it's your testimony then that the sign was up for, I think you said 2 days?
2 days.
And then it was taken down?
It was taken down.
Okay, was it ever put back up?
No. It is still like that. We have pictures of it, of where it was.
Okay.
The sign was
You want to pass those
really
up?
huge.
Okay. Mr. Dahl,
Yes.
what's going on with the sign?
That's the first time I heard there is no sign because I just saw the sign 2 days ago on Sunday. And if it is removed, I'm not sure because I have a picture too, taken to put a sign. And before even putting a sign, I went to community meeting. I went to community association. I explained them all my plans. I've been there for 6 years. I have an existing business, BMO Lounge. It's a bar. So the business went a little bit low on that side of town, and so I decided not to close down, to do something. So that's what I plan of. It was already zoned for C3 because it was, I think, another dealership before I took over. So I decided to just rent out the parking lot for used car, not for any oil change or anything. So I went to the community.
Okay, right now we're just looking at the sign. Mr. Hilliard, any information you have regarding the sign?
I can't share any knowledge particularly to the sign being up or down, unfortunately. I do know he's correct. He did go to the community association and address their general membership meeting. So candidly, I would find it,
That is what it is.
I would not understand why he would want to take the sign down if he's open enough to go before the community.
Oh, I never insinuated that he did take the sign down. I don't know where.
That is not in
gone.
question.
That is where the sign was. On the big plan today, it was huge. It is gone.
Okay, so we've got a photograph here of, looks like a donation, the side of a clothing donation box.
Planet 8 is where the sign was placed. It was white. You couldn't miss it. It was black lettering. It was huge.
Okay.
It is gone.
They told me to put in front of the parking, so there was a sign where I asked. So,
Okay, well, this says November 15th.
right.
And this
When I
is-
put it over there. After that, I saw it on Sunday,
It's not
the
there
sign.
on Saturday.
All right.
That's why I called yesterday to see exactly what was going on with it.
All right, this is a photograph,
That
looks
was on
like,
yesterday.
yeah, I was gonna say it's from December 4th. So, she's got a photograph from as recently as yesterday showing that the sign is not there. And it looks like there's a,
I think the reason that it was, that's the big logo.
Yeah.
As an advertisement.
Some kind of advertisement for some
But
sort
that
of
is where the confusion
pest
came in.
control service.
Some never saw it. The ones that they said thought it was canceled.
Okay, and what?
What days does that give you? 15th to the 4th?
There's, that's 15 days to the 30th, and then 4 more, so 19 days. The difficulty here is that the sign, by statute, the sign has to be up for 21 days continuously prior to the date of the hearing. And that's not something that we can waive. It's a requirement under the statute. The idea is to give notice to the community. So the fact that he did proceed to go to the community association aside, that's not really part of what our inquiry here is. Here, it's that we have to determine that the sign was properly posted to give, anyone passing by notice, and from the photographs that have been offered, it would appear that it wasn't posted for the entire time. Is that a conclusion that's shared by the other members?
19's not 21.
So that means that we can't hear the matter. It doesn't mean that you have to start over. It just means that you have to repost the property, and it has to be up for 21 days continuously prior to the date of the hearing. Our next hearing date is in 2 weeks, so unfortunately, you won't be able to be heard this year. But if you get it up, we should be able to squeeze you in at the first proceeding of the new year.
Okay, sir.
All right.
I understand. And also I want to share one thing. I went to community meeting. There is like 6 houses down the road. I talked to them. They own, okay, sorry, I don't want to take it. I'll come back.
Okay.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. Thank you.
sir.
Thank you all.
Get your comment. I know, but maybe he needs it.
Okay. All right. Next, 2017-163, 4112 Borman Avenue, Lee Giroux.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Ms. Giroux. All right, ma'am, we have this as an application to construct a 1-story side addition for accessibility ramp at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct, but it's not to construct. It's already constructed. Both the addition, which is 10 by 14, and also the ramp, which is 36 by 21 feet.
Okay.
I have some updated drawings I'd like to share with you as well.
Okay. We'll distribute these, and then in the meantime, if you could raise your right hand and please be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Giroux, the floor is yours.
The purpose of us to be here today is because we didn't meet the side yard setback for either the addition or for the ramp. And this has been in existence for approximately 5 years. The owner's brother actually constructed both of those things.
Okay.
When I received a phone call from my customer to come out and take a look at it, I also brought the draftsman who did these drawings, who's my draftsman. And we both went back to the building department and we spoke with them and said that there's a couple of concerns, that there has to be reinforcement, but however, that because it's in a side yard setback, it doesn't meet the 5-foot setback. It's pretty close. It's within about 3 feet, even though the the site plan there doesn't say as much. But this is the detail as it exists right now for both structures. So to be reinforced, there's going to have to be a building permit that will be pretty extensive because of the footers. I physically looked underneath and I was concerned because this is Miss Crosby's mother who's in a wheelchair in the home, and she is the sole owner of the home. And I said to her, for safety reasons, I would not think it would be a good idea for her to continue to use that without it to being rebuilt to code. But more importantly, because we couldn't do it administratively, that's why we're here today.
Okay, so there's a existing ramp, but you're gonna have to build a new one.
In addition, it's gonna have to be reinforced, correct?
Okay.
And we did speak with the neighbor next door, and since it's been there for the 5 years, they have no issues with that at all. So.
And the addition is needed in order to accommodate the ramp?
That's correct. And it's also a means of egress for her mother because there is no ramp in the front of the home. So this would be her only means of egress. And she does spend the day in that addition. That is her space that she basically, from the time she gets up in the morning, it was explained to me that this is where her mom stays until she goes to bed at night. So it's a little bit of a concern having someone wheelchair bound and make sure it's safe. And the railings were minimal. So we pointed out those things at the site at the time.
All right. Any questions? Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Have a nice
happy
holiday.
and
Have a good new year.
happy
Thank you
new
very
year.
much.
(2017-435), 1301 through 1325 North Spring Street, Abraham Hurdle.
Abraham Hurdle on behalf of 1301 through 1325 Spring Street.
Afternoon, Mr. Hurdle.
We're going to be requesting a postponement so we can meet with planning. My understanding is they've recommended deferral at this time, and we'd like to sit down with the, I believe it's Ms. Wallace, who is the local planning representative for that area.
All right. Seeing as how there's no opposition here.
We're hoping for January 21st. Bob?
January 21st?
Well, we have to formalize our schedule for next year. There's been some issues about the availability of this room. So we'll get you in somewhere around that date.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. 2017-436, 3327. Just a moment. 3327 not St. Paul Street. 2017-435, 1301 through 1325 North Spring Street is postponed.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good holiday.
Have a happy holiday and a happy new year. 2017-438, 1 North Haven Street, Justin Williams. Afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
All right, Mr. Williams, we have this as an application to use a portion as tavern with accessory indoor recreation facility.
That is correct.
All right. All those intending to give testimony can raise their right hand and be sworn, please.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right. You have something you want to
I do.
hand up? All right. While you're doing that, do we have staff reports?
Yes, we have a letter from the Highlandtown Community Association basically expressing their support, but with the condition that the hours of operation will be 11 a.m. until 11 p.m. Tuesday through Sunday. Other than that, they support it.
What were those hours again, Bud?
11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Tuesday through Sunday.
Okay. All right, and are those proposed hours acceptable to your client, Mr. Williams?
Yes.
All right. Why don't you tell us about this rather intriguing new addition or proposed addition to the Baltimore entertainment and tavern scene?
For the record, Justin Williams from the law firm Rosenberg Martin Greenberg, here with the applicant Stuart Jones from Urban Access Baltimore LLC. We're here to request a conditional use approval for the use of a portion of the premises as a tavern with accessory indoor recreation. We also need a variance to provide 0 parking spaces and the required 11 spaces. I've handled a number of materials for your review to support our appeal. We're located in the Highlandtown Crescent area of Baltimore. The property is zoned I-2. The property is at 1 North Haven Street, which is a 112,000 square foot converted warehouse that contains office, brewery, light industrial uses. It's surrounded in an area, there's an aerial photo for your review that has a mix of uses. There's a Highlandtown Shopping Center, the H&S Bakery, nearby bar and catering uses, the Pompane Oils to the rear of the site as well. The landlord of the campus is Metro Development, which recently acquired their properties in the past 5 years and has invested over $14 million to rehab the space into like a modern flex office campus. There's a exhibit in your file that shows the before and after pictures. A lot of money and time has gone into this area, and it's really exciting to go back there and see the changes that's gone to this neighborhood. Next to this space, you've seen in the area, there's a former railroad bed. That's the parking area. The property belongs to the Norfolk Southern Railroad, but it's used for parking. There's a long-term lease, 10-year lease with 2 10-year options to provide parking in this area.
And where's the parking?
To the east of the red area. So there's a whole area from down all the way up.
This right here, appearing to the left of the structure as you look at the picture?
To the right. If you're looking north.
Oh, I've got it upside down. I'm sorry. To the right.
To the east.
Gotcha.
There's a number of exciting tenants in the campus, including the Emerging Technology Center, which is BDC's incubator, the Monument City Brewery and Tap Room, as well as Performance Horizon, which is a UK-based marketing software company. It just announced they put 40 more employees back there. So as part of this exciting campus with the hip and emerging Highlandtown art scene, Urban Access has come and is proposing to do a tavern within the portion of 1 North Haven Street as shown on the site plans provided. Similar to how ESPN Zone or a Chuck E. Cheese has a restaurant with a hook of games being provided, the hook for Urban Access is that they use axe throwing as their hook. There's a site plan that shows how it works. Basically, the applicant's proposed tavern is that in addition to having a place for patrons to enjoy craft beers and wine, they'll have indoor competitive axe throwing. A little background on Urban Access. It was founded in 2016 in Philadelphia by a group of Australian American friends who were inspired by the popularity of axe throwing in Toronto. There's a dozen hatchet throwing clubs in Toronto. And so while it's not popular yet in the States, it's growing, or in the Baltimore area, it's growing in popularity stateside. Urban Access has establishments in Austin and Philadelphia, and there's a couple more in the pipeline around the country. It's kind of joining the place of similar outside-the-box entertainment like escape rooms and indoor miniature golf, beer gardens. So in addition to axe throwing, and the group behind Urban Access is passionate about beer and wine. One of the founders is a certified sommelier. So the proposal here is to provide unique craft beers and wine in addition to axe throwing. So the axe throwing component functions like darts. There's a picture of a sample indoor or how other sites function, where patrons throw axes at wooden targets, aiming for a bullseye, trying to score the most points. Competitors use their own lane, all under coach's supervision. Their areas are all cordoned off. Safety is a big priority for Urban Access. There's a coach who gives a briefing to each thrower before they participate. Customers cannot toss axes while drinking. Drinks and all that in the throwing area. A coach who is present will shut down any activity if patrons are unruly or acting inappropriately. Additionally, hard liquor will not be served at the establishment. Managers, bar, and wait staff will take alcohol awareness classes as part of their onboarding and will card anyone appearing to be under 30 years old. The establishment represents a capital investment of $450,000 and will create approximately 45 full and part-time jobs.
So that all sounds interesting. The mixture of alcohol and sharpened metal objects that get thrown through the air certainly interjects some concerns about safety. And looking at your photograph here, this does not appear to be very safe. First, as you said, you were talking about how alcohol wouldn't be permitted in the throwing area. Well, of course, there's alcohol in the throwing area, which appears in your photograph.
In the behind area, not in the throw. So there's a viewing area.
Yes, you're correct. You're absolutely correct. The thrower could merely turn around and grab his beer, which is sitting behind him. There is also no real divider, either between the lanes or from the throwers to the people who are standing, I don't know, maybe about 5 or 6 feet behind them. So if someone in an inebriated state, reaches back like this gentleman here is doing, or this person here, and loses control of the axe, it could go flying behind them, striking the person who's standing right there. Is there a diagram at all that shows, the protections that are being taken? I mean, it sounded interesting to me. I certainly saw the press coverage of this, some sort of announcement, but these were the sorts of concerns that I had when I just heard of it, and I thought, surely this will be taken in a much more safe kind of atmosphere, but I'm not entirely sure that I'm seeing that.
Including the materials I provided for you is a floor plan that shows the throwing areas with dividers shown in the throwing area. Stuart Jones is here. He would testify about
testify, please.
To speak about the safety precautions you take.
So maybe the pictures aren't a clear representation. There is fencing between each pair of throwing lanes. So
well, I do see that there's some fencing that's like immediate that separates the targets, but as far as
there's
between,
no fencing behind the people, no.
I'm sorry?
There's no fencing
behind them, yeah. And I guess what I'm getting at is these are all things that we can add, right? So if we were looking at this and said, well, this sounds interesting, but we want to require that you have screening between where the throwers are and the people queuing behind them. We want to have like an absolute prohibition against alcohol being in the throwing area, including immediately behind the throwers. Wanted to say maybe there needs to be fencing that completely separates each lane and each thrower from one another. Those are all things that are doable, right?
Yes, they are. They would be.
We've all seen videos of a less than professional bowler whose ball ends up in the lane next to them.
Yes.
What prevents the hatchet from landing?
So there is fencing between. So when people they throw in pairs, they throw with each other. The rules, our staff are in that arena with the two throwers at all times. So that at no stage are people left alone. It's not like you get a bowling ball and off you go. Our staff are in the lanes at all times, and their job is two things. People can't go forward until they've both thrown their axe to retrieve it. So there's a protocol to stop that. There is fencing between the two lanes for each pair of throwing lanes, and there's a small divider comes out 6 feet between each target, which stops any cross lane things coming through. There is a timber barrier, which is we call the spectator barrier. So the only people who are allowed inside the throwing arena are the two throwers and the coach.
And that barrier you're talking about, that's this short wall?
That's correct, yeah, that was 4 foot high.
And then the lane dividers you were talking about, that would be these things that separates the groups?
Yep.
but not the individual throwers from one another.
This is very difficult to see, but there is gauged wire right there.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
wire that separates the
Chain link.
individual targets.
Correct. Because they come in pairs.
Yes, but I was talking about that there's nothing that separates each thrower from one another or a complete divider from the audience behind and the thrower.
I believe Mr. Williams stated that this activity is in several other locations at this point in time.
That's correct. We have a facility in Philadelphia and Austin, which are both operating.
Are those facilities designed?
That's exactly a photo of our Philadelphia location.
Okay.
And there's been no safety concerns or safety issues in your year of operation?
And the sport itself was invented in Toronto. This facility is built to the same specifications and the same way that they're built there. And you know, we are also part of, in conjunction with in Toronto, we set up a national axe throwing federation, which has a set of rules and standards and safety protocols between facilities to make sure that there's a consistency in how the operation is set up, so to make sure that we have those protocols.
It's not so much relevant here, but I'm assuming that you have your customers sign a fairly robust waiver.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And we spend an extensive time period before we opened getting insurance and getting the proper insurance. And that required us to prepare detailed safety plans and training programs which were submitted to our insurers to make sure that we were covering off all their concerns.
There's probably room right down the hall if you want to give us a.
We've also shared our plans with the community. Highlandtown supports application, as does Councilman Scott, who's here as well.
Councilman, was there anything you wanted to offer?
Yeah, just very simply that Highlandtown is very excited to
Swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
This
I'm going to come around to the microphone.
So we're very much so looking forward to having urban access in Highlandtown. We think that this is going to be the next part of our redevelopment of Haven Street. We know that we have the Emerging Technology Center there. We have a brewing company that's there, and we think that this will be the next phase of trying to bring some new life into this. It has the total support of myself, but also, more importantly, the Highlandtown Community Association, the entire 46th District delegation, and we know that we're working with the administration and BDC to see the other part of this go through, because we have pending council legislation as well. So all of us are in agreement. I actually will be in Austin, Texas, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and intend to go and check it out myself and throw a few axes while I'm there.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, we'd add. I mean, we understand your concerns about the safety precautions, but they are a member of the National Federation, which just has certain standards, and they have their own insurance to think about and to be aware of, and so they also ensure that they would be careful, and they have a monetary interest to be careful to make sure that the proper regulations and structure are in place to prevent any injury to patrons.
That's certainly true, yes. Anything else?
In the materials, I've given you the reasons that the factors you should consider when granting the conditional use approval and the variance approval should be granted.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks. 2017, that's 439, 1150 North Stricker Street, Vera Harry.
Yes, hello, everybody.
How are you?
Afternoon, ma'am. All right, you're Ms. Harry?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and Ms. Harry, we have this as an application to use the premises as a rooming house with 6 rooming units. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Ma'am, if you would raise your right hand and be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And do we have staff reports?
Planning Department reviewed the application and has no objection to this application. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Harry, why don't you tell us about what you're proposing here?
Well, I'm just trying to get two extra units. The house is fairly big home. It's like 1,800 square feet. Is a need for the affordable rooms. That's the nature of my business, affordable rooms. So add the 2 additional units would keep it at an affordable rate because the property taxes on this home has risen, tripled actually in the last 3 years among other expenses in the home.
Okay, it looks like there are 2 bedrooms.
2 bedrooms on each floor, yes.
Floor. I can't. Looks like on the first floor, looks like there are 2 bedrooms but no bathroom.
Yes, 2 4-bedrooms on the 2nd and 3rd level.
Okay. So the people in the first would have to use the bathroom on the 2nd or 3rd floor?
Yes. It's a shared bath and a shared kitchen.
And currently, you're renting 4 rooms, is that correct?
Yes. Well, currently I was renting the 6 rooms because I wasn't aware of that. I couldn't do it until I came down here, and they told me I had to go through the whole zoning process.
Okay.
Okay. And these are individuals who are occupying each of the bedrooms?
Yes, they are. Most of them are elderly, so we don't really need parking. Parking wouldn't be a problem. The subway is 15 minutes away, and the bus line is 1 block away.
Okay. Okay. Any questions? Nope. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Uh, 2017-440, 2322 West Fayette Street, Timothy Bridges. Mr. Bridges, we have this as an application to use the premises, to use the first floor of the premises as a barber shop. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Sir, if you would please raise your right hand to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
Yes, Planning Department has reviewed this application, which is classified as a neighborhood commercial establishment request, and recommends that approval of the application be subject to the condition that the use complies with all requirements of the zoning code relating to neighborhood commercial establishments. This in particular applies to signage on the building. Thank you.
Okay. Were there any particular concerns that Planning Department had regarding signage, Mr. French?
No, simply that the signage be limited to the C1 requirement.
Okay.
There will be new signage for the new use of the building.
All right. All right. Mr. Bridges, why don't you tell us about what you've got proposed here?
I've got a building, had this building in my family for about 40 years, And so it was a grocery store, and so now I want to convert it to a barber shop. Not really doing anything with the building right now, so.
Okay. And you said your family's owned it for about 40 years?
Yes.
All right. And during that whole time, it's been used as a commercial?
Grocery store, yes.
Grocery store.
Mhm.
All right. All right. Okay. Any questions?
No.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a happy holiday and a happy new year.
Okay.
That's 2017-445, 511 South Caroline Street, Mark Fitzgerald.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Afternoon, sorry. Mr. Fitzgerald, we have this as an application to add live entertainment to an existing restaurant with live outdoor dining. Live outdoor dining. And remove conditions on operating hours. Is that correct?
Essentially, yeah. The wording's a little bit funny there, I agree.
Yeah, okay. Well, we can get into that. Sir, please raise your right hand and be sworn.
Please swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Right. And do we have staff reports?
Yes, essentially we have a support for live entertainment petition with 70 signatures, probably a few more than that, from people that live along Eden Beach Avenue, okay, Thames Street. Okay, in any case, and then there's planning's report.
Thank you. Planning Department reviewed the application, noted that this property is within the Fells Point Historic District, and therefore recommends that approval of the application be subject to these conditions, in addition to any conditions the board may establish. All exterior work, additions, alterations, or demolition following approval of this application must be completed in accordance with an authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. A copy of the use and occupancy permit for the premises must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. A copy of the written approval by the board of the live entertainment provided on the premises, including details of any restrictions or limitations on the live entertainment provided, must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. And a copy of all other permits and licenses required pursuant to the written approval of the board must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Fitzgerald, are those conditions stated by the Planning Department acceptable to you?
They are.
All right. Why don't you tell us about what you're proposing here?
We have a restaurant that's open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we've had some requests by our guests for a DJ essentially on Friday and Saturday nights.
Okay.
So it's the business of the restaurant to try to say yes as much as possible, so I'm trying to accede to our guest requests.
All right, so the live entertainment would be limited to a DJ on Friday and Saturday nights?
Yes.
Okay, now, we do recall when this appeal initially came forward, there was some community opposition. I'll note the lack of that today. Particularly there was as we recall, there was a neighbor to the rear who was concerned about noise coming through from the restaurant to his home. Any issues with that since the restaurant's been up?
No, his concerns at the time, I believe, were unfounded. I can understand his concerns, though, but in the last year, we've proven to be good neighbors to everybody. In the interim, although he's never been a customer, I've walked Deepak through the business, shown him all our soundproofing, and I've had no complaints from him. I guess he hasn't written any complaints to you guys.
No, we don't have anything in the file.
No.
Okay. So it would be 7 to 1, 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. Friday, and 7 to 2 on Saturdays. Could we shave those Saturday hours to like 1:30 or 1 o'clock?
Actually, I'd be happy to split it down 1:30 for both nights. I'm afraid I filled that out incorrectly. It was either supposed to be 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock to be consistent.
Yeah.
And I made a typo.
That's okay. All right, you already have outdoor seating?
We have outdoor seating.
Again, this would be live entertainment only, not dancing along with it?
No, we never contemplated dancing.
Okay. I just noticed the lack of a dance floor or anything like that.
There's a reason, yeah.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a happy holiday, by the way. 2017-449, 2223 Maryland Avenue, William Bauer.
Morning.
Actually,
afternoon. Yeah, it's afternoon now.
Afternoon, Mr. Bauer. We have this as an application to use a portion of the main level as a neighborhood commercial establishment. That is a coffee shop, deli, and grocery store. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. If all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands and be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. And ma'am, your name?
Helena Del Pesco.
Okay. Can you spell that last name?
D-E-L space P-E-S-C-O.
Okay. Do we have any staff reports?
Planning.
Yes, thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property rear portion is eligible for consideration as a neighborhood commercial establishment. The property is also in the Charles 25th Urban Renewal Area, and this is a contributing structure as designated in that urban renewal plan. For that reason, the Department of Planning has no objection to approval of the application as it relates to the proposed use of the lower level and rear addition of the existing structure on this property as a neighborhood commercial establishment, provided that the approval, if granted, is subject to the condition that all signage for the commercial establishment is installed in accordance with plans approved by the Department of Planning. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Bauer, are those conditions stated by the Planning Department acceptable to you?
Absolutely.
All right. And why don't you tell us about what's being proposed here?
Sure, let me introduce you to Ms. Helena, and she's going to describe her operation.
Sure.
So there's a garden level as well as an outbuilding off the back, and the front portion will be used as a coffee shop, opening at 7 a.m., and the back portion will be a larder, which is a sort of old-fashioned name for a pantry. So we'll be selling locally made goods as well as having a lunch counter, and that portion will be open until 6:30 p.m.
Okay. All right, it's kind of a large building.
Yes, so part of it in the center where it says dry storage on the drawing, that will be, you know, a dish pit, a walk-in, some prep area. So the public seating areas will be where it's marked coffee and where it's marked larder. There will be a significant emphasis on takeout, things made to be taken out easily. So there's not a large amount of seating in the two spaces, about, I'd say, 16 seats in each space.
All right. Any other questions?
No.
All right, thank you both.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, have a happy holiday.
Happy holidays, thank you. Thank you.
2017-420, 2511 East Fayette Street, Wei Zhang. Good afternoon, folks. All right. You Mr. and Mrs. Zhang? Okay. So why don't you identify yourselves respectively?
I know he goes.
His way.
Okay, he's Wei Zhang, and you are ma'am?
I'm his friend.
Okay, what's your name?
Chen, C-H-E-N.
Okay. And your first name, ma'am?
First name C-H-U-N.
C-H-U-N? Okay. And
C-H-E-N.
Okay. All right. And you're going to be translating for Mr. Zhang?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And we have this as an application to use the first floor as a grocery store. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. If all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hand and be sworn, and just wait a moment, Ms. Chen, we've got we've got a different oath for you.
Oh, okay.
Well, so why don't we start off with you?
In the language.
Mandarin Chinese.
Do you swear or affirm to translate from Mandarin Chinese to English and English to Mandarin Chinese to the best of your ability? All right. The rest of you raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Do we have staff reports?
Yes. First, we have a letter from the Patterson Park Neighborhood Association Vice President and Chairman of their Economic Development Committee. They're in opposition. They write that the abundance of overlapping corner markets and grocery stores, the new grocery store at 2511 East Fayette Street, sits on the adjacent corner from the current Wynn's Grocery, which is less than 1/10 of a mile away. They have supplied a map that shows where these locations are. The oversaturation of these markets in the immediate area, these establishments typically employ 1 to 3 persons, attract high rates of petty larceny or targeted robberies, and with an adjacent bus stop across the street can attract loitering to a highly residential area. Second item, the previous tenant at this location, SOS Bar and Lounge, was a target and encountered all the problems laid out on our first point. Neighbors worked hard to work with the owner and operator, and that business eventually failed. The new owners of 2511 have already painted over a community-funded mural that was done, so with that regard to the immediate neighbors. He writes that while the neighbors in the immediate vicinity are in favor of supporting a small local business, they do not feel that the Patterson Park business portfolio, nearby neighbors, or overall community would benefit from this new business being operated at 2511 East Fayette Street. Attached are neighbors who share the same concerns. There are 10 signed residents who live in primarily the unit block of North Rose Street. We have received a letter from Zach Cohen indicating that he supports the neighbors. Among their concerns, a potential negative impact on the neighborhood by loitering, litter, and the oversaturation of corner markets. Let's see. And then we have planning's report. Thank you.
Planning Department has reviewed this application. Planning Department is aware of the concerns of the neighborhood and believes that there is a need for additional dialogue between the two groups. The department, however, recommends approval of the application, which would extinguish non-conforming use of the property, subject to the condition that the use complies with all requirements for a neighborhood commercial establishment, including maximum area for a projecting sign, if the applicant intends to maintain a projecting sign for the grocery store. There was a projecting sign for the tavern. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and Mr. Zhang, are those conditions stated by the planning department acceptable to you?
Yes.
Was he able to understand what Mr. Friend said?
No.
Thank you, sir. Oh, okay. So what's the decisions right now?
I can't really hear you, ma'am.
So what's the decisions right now?
You're asking what you should do?
Huh? Uh-huh.
I was asking if, first of all, if Mr. Zhang understood the position of the planning department, which is in that letter. So you probably need to be able to read that to him or summarize it to him. And then the question is whether or not he's willing to agree to what the planning department is asking.
Yeah. Okay, do I have to translate the whole thing to him?
You can summarize it.
Okay.
There's a provision at the end,
The
Mr. French.
recommendation, the last paragraph.
Recommendation at the end.
Recommendations right here, okay. Sorry, I'm not really understand the whole thing right here.
Oh.
Can you take a look? I'm sorry.
So it's saying that you're gonna comply with everything from the neighborhood commercial establishment, so like how you, but they did some, you know, all of it's in here about like off-street parking and the sign that's over there, that SOS sign, so.
Thank you.
No problem.
他说所有的东西，他这里面列出来的所有的东西，你都必须，所有的要求我们都必须达到才可以。Okay, yes.
Okay, yes? All right. All right, before the hearing, this was a case where there was opposition that was signed in, offered you both the opportunity to speak. Were you able to get anything worked out?
I believe so.
Okay.
So then I don't, do I let you know what we worked out, and does that good? Okay.
Yeah, because we'd put whatever your agreement is onto the record, and that would be part of whatever approval that gets generated.
So my only concern is I feel like most of our negotiations was with that guy there, but he's not up here. So who are you?
He's the one helping him because he's the owner.
Okay.
He is the owner, and they work together.
So then my main concern would be communication, because so right now you're our communicator, and you communicated a little bit, and you not so much at all. So in the future, if we need to communicate as a neighborhood, how does that happen?
No, you can talk to me all the time because we live together. I'm his daughter-in-law. Do I say that?
Yes.
Is it,
Okay.
Yeah, daughter-in-law.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Then, okay, you just weren't the people that, okay.
Because he's the owner and I'm his daughter-in-law, but they work together all the time because they I can speak a little bit, but they cannot speak any. So
Okay,
that's
all
the
right.
that's the main thing.
Okay, so then we agreed that we'd have better communication because we weren't able to communicate to this point. We agreed that they would be mindful of the trash, make sure that trash cans were installed outside, make sure to push away loiterers because as was represented in the letters, our main concern is with so many corner grocery stores, it's hard to, like it attracts crimes, it attracts, there's one, a block away that clearly has drug trafficking, so we want to make sure that they push people away from that, that the area's lit, and they talked about getting, external lights with cameras. And the other thing we agreed on was to find a way to possibly put the mural back on. We'll look at the cost, and we know who did the mural, so they said that they did that because there was a requirement to paint over the building, so they were just kind of following the letter of the law and didn't look into the fact that, the community must have put up this mural. So, so we just want to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again. And that they will mainly just work with the neighborhood. There's an outstanding issue because we would not like to have plexiglass installed because that just says a certain thing about our neighborhood. When you have the plexiglass and the turnstiles, we couldn't really come to an agreement on that. They said they're going to look at it depending on the area, but that is something that the neighborhood would like to not see. But we understand at this point how it's probably necessary for us to move on and compromise on that.
Okay, all right. So I've got three specific areas where there's been agreement. One, the owner will discourage loitering outside the property or outside the store. Two, the owner will be installing exterior lighting, and that's going to be along the side as well as the front.
Yeah.
Okay. Any video cameras or anything like that
Yes.
go along with that? Okay. So install exterior lighting on side and front with video cameras. And also that the owner is going to be installing exterior trash cans. And are these trash cans for just like a normal trash can, or are these sort of like the takeaway bins that the big garbage trucks, whatever, come and get? I'm guessing these are more sort of the smaller trash can.
Smaller trash can. We're gonna put a couple more outside, so that would be better for us and easy to change the.
Right. The business before had the bin, and then what would happen with the bin is there were cars parked in front of the bin, so then when trash came to pick it up, it couldn't. So we're okay with external trash cans as long as they're kept empty.
Okay. All right.
Now, what was the agreement with respect to the mural? I missed that part.
Yeah.
That we are going to, we're just not sure how much the mural costs, but we're going to we receive grants and stuff, but we'll contact the original mural artist and see about putting the mural back up, or maybe not that exact mural, but putting something up besides the current gray wall.
Okay, so the parties.
Responsibility to pay for that?
The shops.
We're gonna pay for it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'll say that the parties will work together to repaint mural. Okay? All right. Those are the 4 points?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much all for working together and coming to that agreement. It's always good when neighbors try to cooperate with one another.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a happy holiday. Next, 2017-431, 1701 Desoto Road. Angela Beals.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Okay, you're Ms. Beals?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and sir, you are?
Mr. Beals.
Okay.
Your first name?
Oliver.
Thank
All right, and sir, your name?
Ed Brooks, next door neighbor.
Okay. All right, and Mr. and Mrs. Beals, we have this as an application to install 16 linear feet of 8-foot-high fence on the party wall lot line. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. If all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands, please, and be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I do. All right, do we have staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
No. Okay. Ms. Beals, why don't you tell us about what's being proposed here, particularly the need for the 8-foot-high fence?
Well, the need for the 8-foot-high fence is, but she's not here today. This is her husband. Her name is Denise Brooks, and I've had the house for about 9 years now, and it got to be so unbearable to even go into my backyard. She curses my 6-year-old granddaughter. She stands at the fence, and I have pictures of all of this that she does. She stands at her porch. This was prior to me putting up a porch. And she stands there with a spoon and beats on her hand, giving dirty looks and scaring my granddaughter. She has thrown acid on my lawn. She actually came acid.
What kind of acid?
I don't know what kind it was, but what it did is it burnt a hole in the lawn.
Okay.
Okay, and she, it's really difficult to even stand here and say this because it's unbelievable to me. My mind just can't even comprehend why she does the things that she does. She blocks my driveway, but what I'm going to try to do here is just keep it to the back porch.
Okay.
Okay, so when I came home from jogging one morning, and she was in my yard. And this is why I decided to put up the fence on that side.
Your neighbor was in your
Yes, she was in my yard. And my flowers get destroyed. I called the police every single time, and they say that there's really nothing that they can do. She hangs. This is what she hangs on her porch that my people have, when they come to visit me, my relatives, this is what they have to look at. And you can flip through all of these as they all pertain to the porch. And there's one on there where she's very violent. She's extremely violent.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, she'll shout that she's gonna, kick my butt, and that calls me all kinds of names, and right in front of my granddaughter, and I have to rush my granddaughter into the house, away from the situation. Which, by the way, they have a grandchild that I treat with nothing but respect. I stay on my own property, and I mind my own business. And unfortunately, I have asked them repeatedly. There's nothing else I can do. I've put up a petition out front to keep her from, this is my yard. And she gets in there and just destroys it. So I had to put the fence up. She leaves me notes. So if I have to go out and inspect my property before I can even go out in the yard or invite anybody over. Here's the hose that she floods. She flooded my yard with this hose. Then when I put the porch up, we had all of our tools out on the porch, and we had just cemented underneath the porch, and she squirted under there. I had to call the police. She squirted there and ruined the entire cement job.
$175 worth of cement.
This is the gate that was there. This is the reason that I put it. Now, this is her porch here. Okay, so she has access to just removing that. You see how that would stop it from going all the way through? She would just remove it very quickly. And the morning when I called her, she was going back in, and I could see the gate moving a little bit. This is not really a gate. This is a part of the fence.
So, just so I understand, you've got I guess this is the newly constructed deck. It's 16 feet long?
Yes,
And what you're proposing?
exactly her porch.
And you're proposing to put a 16-foot wide strip of fence
Yes, yes, sir.
parallel with that?
Yes, sir.
In between her fence, the property line, and our deck. Our deck's 2 feet off the property line.
Yes, sir, and it actually comes right to the corner of her deck to where she won't have access to me. This is, if you'd like to see another one.
And if you want to show us, we'll look.
This is her coming out and violently, and she'll show up in a minute, violently shaking the fence.
And screaming
And for a long
obscenities.
time, pointing her finger and yelling and screaming. So that's why I need to protect myself.
Okay, and this is, looks like you've got a semi-detached home?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
All right, is that it?
Yes.
Sir?
All that is, at any rate, when she was I was at work, when she was supposed to be wetting down her concrete, we had an insurance person in the house talking about Aflac when the police come. And they were in there for an hour at least, talking about Aflac when the police come for this incident. As far as anything else, she starts so much crap with my wife. My wife is on medication now because of it. That's all she does is start. She says we throw acid, we threw this. They got cameras everywhere, including pointing in my living room. We should have video of us doing whatever they're saying we're doing. We're not doing that at all. As far as the fence goes, I don't care. Put it on their property. It's on my property.
Okay.
So as long as the fence is not on the party line.
About the
you don't-
last three of their things, I got pictures. You can see where dog legs in.
Do you have the survey?
This is my house 28 years ago. See that fence? That was a chain link fence. I put my fence 3 to 4 inches behind that when I put my pool in. This is what we gotta look at from the deck. That's what they call a 16-foot fence. The reason these are up, the blankets, is because they got cameras everywhere. We cannot sit on our deck and enjoy a cookout with them looking at us.
So, I'm not sure from this photo,
If you look down the very end there, you see how the fence dog legs in? I have the wooden fence. That is, my wooden fence is 3 inches, 3 to 4 inches away from the actual property line.
So is your objection not to the fence? Your objection is
They're putting it on their own property. I don't care if they put a 30-foot fence up. As long as I don't see them, I'm better with it. They need to take the cameras out of my living room, though.
May I speak now? I assure you that my fence is on my property.
On our property, we had it surveyed.
Absolutely. It's absolutely on my property. If anything, there's a portion of their fence on mine, but I don't care.
And to mention the cameras, we do it for
You don't have to
security.
mention the cameras.
That's all. And there's nothing in his living room.
do you have a copy of the survey with you?
No, I don't.
This, sir, I had a deck up for like 28 years in a pool. This is how they waste our taxpayers' money.
Well, just saying that good fences make good neighbors.
That's why I say 30 foot, I'm good with it. Just put it on their own property.
I think that that's kind of what this situation cries out for. All right. Sir, do you have a survey of the,
I was going to get one, but I don't think it's fair that I had to pay for a surveyor.
so if they have a surveyor, if they have a survey, correct? That was
When I
prepared?
first bought the property in 2003, where it is now, I have no clue.
Okay.
But it was marked off for me at that time because I was told previously that whatever I did to my house, there was going to be hell to pay.
Okay,
And that was pretty much right.
all right. So are you folks willing to agree to split the cost of a surveyor?
Oh, no, I won't, no. This was something I had never even heard of. And as a matter of fact, you could have tapped on my door.
That's why you got in a
and-
big argument with White Tower to get a surveyor.
Folks,
I'm sorry.
folks, with respect, ma'am, you obviously would have to locate a fence on your own property.
Absolutely.
If you had a survey at one point, but you've lost it, we can't really, no one can really be sure where the
Right.
fence, whether or not the fence is being located
I don't expect
on
you to
your
take my word
property
for
or
it.
not. So.
But he's the one that's bringing it up. So if he's saying
but it
this,
would, but it's your fence though. And you obviously, you wouldn't be able to build the fence on his property because it's his property.
okay, right, exactly. So how
so-
much is he saying that it's on his property?
Because it's,
Right.
Well-
No, because I'll be glad to move it.
it's,
I'll be
ti-
gl-
it's this far from his existing
He can have it,
fence.
he can have it as long as the fence is left alone.
It's his
I mean, as
farm.
long as I can move it
Do you
over.
want the fence?
Oh, definitely want the fence, yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
And I'll move it over.
Okay, all right.
don't have any problem with that.
So you folks are gonna have to split the cost of of the survey to figure out where the line is, where the property line is.
Okay.
Make sure that, so everyone knows that the property is, that the fence is on your property. It's
Okay.
not on theirs.
No problem.
And then we should be done.
I think that's a good idea anyhow. Split the cost.
We could do this without a bunch of yelling, but we just don't see eye to eye on anything.
Okay, but sir, you do understand that you're not gonna have to pay for half of the survey,
That's fine,
correct?
that's fine. I wasn't going to put out the whole thing myself.
And he should initiate this.
Well, it's your fence.
It's your fence.
Oh, it's my
So
fence,
you-
so I should initiate it?
Well,
Okay,
pick your surveyor,
okay,
and then you
And-
gotta pay half the bill.
okay. No problem.
I'd like to know who they're getting and the
You have
person.
to be.
Well, it's
you
my
know,
fence, so I can get who I want, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right, anything else?
Yeah, so did we solve the issue with the height of the fence?
It's not in.
No, I mean,
That's a 7-foot fence there.
no, I mean, did we solve that issue? Because that's what we're here for.
Well, the board's gonna, that's your appeal, and the board will vote on that. I understand you don't have an objection to the height.
No,
Okay.
Okay.
put it
Oh,
on their
okay.
own side.
All right.
And the one between the two decks, that's a little ridiculous, hideous looking, that should come down.
Well, but that's not in front of us.
That's to keep the violence down.
I think that that's probably necessary.
You ever
Yes.
heard of saying neighbor from hell? We have it.
Well,
Whatever.
I think that on either side of the fence, that would be the remark about the person on the other side,
Exactly.
so.
But at least make our side look as nice as theirs, because it is lapped over, it looks horrible.
That we can't do anything about. Anything else at this point, folks?
No, sir.
All right.
Thank you for
very
your
much.
time.
Thank you.
Have a good holiday.
Have a happy holiday.
Thank you.
And a happy new year.
You too.
Okay. Okay. All right, 2017-446, 1426 Druid Hill Avenue, Dan Midvidi.
Yeah, I think that's the rest of the room.
9 people signed in.
Good afternoon. I'll just take a minute to set up.
Sure, thank you, sir.
boards visible by all members?
Yes.
Mr. Chairperson, Commissioners, good afternoon. My name is Dan Midvedy. I'm
Afternoon, sir. Mr. Midvedy, we have this described as a proposal to use the premises for 21 dwelling units. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And folks, if we could have all those intending to give testimony raise their right hands and be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
Yes. First, we have a letter dated December 1st from the Upton Planning Committee Incorporated Development Committee. They write that the developer and the association met on Friday, December 1st, 2017. Mr. Midvedy indicated that he could build up to 10 units at 1426 Druid Hill Avenue without a variance, and that he is seeking a density variance that would allow him to build 21 units. He has proposed 21 units building, indicating that this is the only way to make the project profitable. When he presented 1426 Druid Hill Avenue, the project on December 1st, the community meeting, he never suggested, aside from cost, that there was something unique about the building that would make it impossible to develop anything other than 21 units. The association does not support the density variance because there are many other viable options for the property. The developer has chosen not to move forward with small-scale development, but rather has consolidated 4 properties into one, and says that this is the only way their project can be economically viable. The association's position is that Mr. McVitie's choice to consolidate the properties has created a funding hardship created by himself. That the committee recognizes that increasing the home ownership levels in the community will bring stability and provide a quality of life that is desirable. Therefore, they want home ownership as a priority in their community. Over the last 18 months, the community has worked with key development partners and the Baltimore City DHCD, which has garnered over $208 million in core resources to support ownership redevelopment efforts in the community. Marble Hill is currently one of Upton's strongest communities and has 26% home ownership rate. Let's see. The 1400 block of Druid Hill Avenue currently has 8 properties that are being stabilized and redeveloped for home ownership. The development of a 21-unit building on the 1400 block of Druid Hill Avenue will significantly influence the marketability of the 8 home ownership projects which are underway. We have 4 letters from residents that repeat many of the same things, but they emphasize that there is a need for family housing as opposed to small apartments under the mayor's initiative to get people to move into the city. One of them indicates that it should be noted that the applicant unfortunately has a track record of poor management of his properties. We have a letter from Councilman Costello. Mr. McVitie, both the property owner and the proposed developer, has met with the association on November 21st, 2017, and again on December 1st, 2017. Both groups voted overwhelmingly to oppose this appeal for a variance. The opposition is based on several important factors, including but not limited to a nearly 2-year master planning process in Upton, which has outlined a detailed housing strategy which prioritizes home ownership, The recent award of the Maryland State Corps funding to begin implementation of this strategy, the fact that the Marble Hill has the highest ownership versus rental rate in the larger Upton catchment area at this level of density would reverse a trend the community is seeking to continue, and parking issues related to the proposed 21 units by only providing 8 parking spaces. Most importantly, though, this appeal for a variance and 50% increase in density does not meet the required findings outlined by the City Zoning Code, Article 32, Section 5-308. While it is always my desire to seek a compromise at this time, I do not believe that a compromise is here, and none is possible. And then there's planning's report.
Thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application. This property is in the Upton's Marble Hill District, which is a locally designated historic district. All exterior changes to the properties, including additions, demolitions, and alterations, are subject to review and approval by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. The applicant has obtained from the Director of Planning a waiver of the, or exemption, I should say, from the parking requirement that would be imposed by 21 units, and would therefore be allowed to have 8 parking spaces at the rear of the property based upon that exemption. The department recommends that approval of this application, if granted, be subject to the condition that all additions, alterations, or demolition are completed in accordance with an authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Midvideo, are those conditions stated by the Planning Department acceptable to you?
They are.
All right. Why don't you walk us through what you're proposing here?
Sure. First, I'd like to distribute 6 letters of support that we've received for this project, and then I'll read from some of them. So we received letters of support for this proposal from Habitat for Humanity, Baltimore Heritage, Renaissance Academy High School, Housing Policy Watch, Pastor Joel Kurtz, a resident of the community, and Marty Petrelli, who will be speaking momentarily. She's a resident of the community and the CHAP ARC representative. Mike Posco from Habitat for Humanity writes, I'm writing to offer support for the plans of Meadow Property Management to develop 1426 Druid Hill. Based on our deep knowledge of its work, we believe Meadow Property Management is well suited for tackling projects such as 1426 Druid Hill. The property will build on the strength Meadow Property helped create immediately across the street at 416 and 426 Mosier. As you know, Meadow Property is an award-winning developer. The company is well known for its commitment to workforce development, and Dan also serves on several community boards and does work with Renaissance Academy. This development represents an opportunity to extinguish a corner of blight that otherwise has no pathway for revitalization. As with its earlier successes, we believe that Meadow Property's efforts at 1426 will continue to stimulate nearby development. Habitat for Humanity of the Chesapeake needs more private sector partners like Meadow Property Management working on the west side of Baltimore. Habitat has worked in nearby Sandtown, Winchester for 3 decades. We are familiar with Meadow's work in Sandtown, Winchester, Harlem Park, Marble Hill, Union Square, and elsewhere on Baltimore's west side. We'd love to see another high-quality Meadow Property Management project at 1426 Druid Hill. Sincerely, Mike Posco, Chief Executive Officer. Nakia Rowe, Principal for Renaissance Academy. Dear Mr. Tanner, I'm writing as the principal of Renaissance Academy High School in support of Meadow Properties Management's 21-unit redevelopment plan for 1426 Druid Hill. This project will transform a block of our historic community that is currently standing unused in blight into affordable housing to serve current community families. Meadow Property Management will use historic tax credit in the restoration work, returning these once grand row houses back to buildings that contribute to historic Upton community. We are confident that Meadow Property Management will complete the project with tact, efficiency, balancing power, change, and energy with respect for history. Additionally, for the record, and has already been submitted, there's a letter from Housing Policy Watch. Hopefully Ms. Ogg will be joining us shortly. She has had a transportation issue. And as I mentioned, Ms. Petrelli will be speaking shortly.
I have, excuse me, I have one addendum to that list. Mr. Kurtz sent me an email asking us to withdraw his letter of support. Says I'm not voicing opposition per se, I simply cannot publicly go against my fellow Marble Hill neighbors over a development project. At the end of the day, I'm a pastor and I am a minister to the neighborhood. We're a church for the neighborhood, and I don't seek division battles with anyone.
And unfortunately, I've had several written and phone telephonic communications with people who've been supporters of the project, but likewise feel pressured to be an advocate. So maybe I can get into the merits of this proposal. First, I just want to direct everyone's attention to the map on the far right, which I'm going to walk over to. Okay.
So if you could,
I'll carry it.
yeah, if you could maybe bring the easel over, and then that way it's behind you. That's good.
The subject property is 1426, shaded in blue. We completed 416 and 426 Mosier Street. In light green, we have an ongoing project which has been stabilized and funded by Baltimore Community Lending at 1401 McCullough, immediately across from Renaissance Academy. All the properties shaded in red are unoccupied. This includes the large Providence Hospital, which is a burnt-out shell, a number of vacant lots and buildings on the 1400 block of Druid Hill on both sides of the street. Needless to say, there's a great deal of vacancy. To my right, adorned by some letters of support, there's the subject property. I took this photo yesterday afternoon. Each of these 4 row homes that are situated on 1426 Druid Hill are approximately 20 feet, ranging from 19'6" to 20'2", and they're approximately 62 to 65 feet deep. What we propose to do at these 4 properties is basically 4 times what we are doing at 1401 McCullough. So 1401 McCullough is permitted. We have a loan commitment from Baltimore Community Lending, and we've already spent $150,000 on its stabilization. Again, these properties are wide and deep. So the plan for 1401 McCullough, like these subject properties here, is to have an apartment at the front and the rear of each floor, where there's a partial floor on 3 of the buildings away from the corner. The idea would be to have just 1 apartment. So I'll just show that. These properties were built in the 1800s. Some of them were rooming houses in the 1800s. They've been multifamily dwellings for some time. However, they've been allowed to fall into neglect. And in the case of the 1430 and 32 buildings, Baltimore City saw fit to stabilize these structures because they had been, due to collapse. The stabilization was limited, so many floor joists are missing. I believe every single floor joist will have to be touched in these 4 properties. Most of them are going to be replaced. So compared to 1401 McCullough Street, this is a heavier lift for a number of reasons. First of all, the this is structurally less sound. The brick walls are bowed. 2 of them are close to collapse. All the floor joists will have to be replaced or will be impacted. And compared to 1401 McCullough Street, which faces a recently upgraded Renaissance Academy and backs onto Madison Park, in fact, is in Madison Park, this property is surrounded by largely nothing but vacants. There's a humongous burnout shell at the corner on the 1300 block of Division and Lafayette, which these properties back onto. So I'd like to take a step back for a second and tell you about how we approach properties like 1426 Druid Hill. Whether it's 416 Mosier Street, 1401 McCullough Street, or 3400 Auchentrolley Terrace, or indeed the subject property, we believe in taking on prominent end-of-group corner properties adjacent to some budding strength, where we feel that we can help tip the balance in the right direction. This property is located in an R8 district. R8 districts have matter-of-right multifamily dwelling uses. I believe that this property, as proposed for development, is pro-single-family dwelling, in the sense that there's no other option for these properties to go forward, and blight is the alternative, the only alternative, and that the numbers just, we cannot get financing to do this property, and I have evidence to support that. At 1401 McCullough Street, which, as I indicated, is a less expensive property with more attractive rent pro formas, we went to Baltimore Community Lending. We had conversations with Enterprise. We had conversations with a number of additional CDFIs in this space. Baltimore Community Lending, in the end, would not underwrite the projected rents that we sought, which are affordable rents, and consequently, they're moving forward with a 70% loan-to-value loan. That's difficult, and this property is substantially, we're projecting rents 20% lower at this property because of the surrounding circumstances, and costs approximately 15% higher. So we really had to make a stretch to get financing to move forward at 1401 McCullough. I mentioned 70% financing. That would only be 60% financing if we didn't pledge additional assets. And there's a limit to my investors' appetite for over-pledging assets. So, like I said, when I think about 1426, I think of 1401 McCullough. We've gone through permitting, drawings, loan application, loan underwriting, stabilization. Our numbers here are not speculative. We've been doing this since 2010. 1401 is around the corner and makes a great metaphor. The 5 + 5 + 6 mirrors 1401 McCullough, and I know how difficult it's been to move 1401 McCullough forward, despite investors having solid balance sheets and credit history. It's the property underwriting. So some might ask, why not build 1 apartment per floor at each of these houses? And the answer to that is because each apartment would be approximately 1,400 square feet. And I would have to charge $2,200 a month for those 1,400 square feet. Those rents can barely be realized in Hamden. They certainly cannot be realized in Marble Hill, adjacent to all these vacants. People ask, well, then how about a single-family house? A single-family house at between 4,500 and 5,000 square feet would, at the corner, I'd need to offer that house for sale for $750,000. And there's nothing of the sort that's transacted. And no bank will underwrite either venture, 1 apartment per floor or single-family housing. People have also talked about the possibility of co-ops and condos, and similarly, those numbers just don't work. It would cost, as a single-family, as 1 apartment per floor, the 1,400 square feet. I know that our hard costs are $150 per square foot when one keeps in mind the requirement to sprinkler, the heavy structural work, the all new systems, the extent of devastation that these houses have already suffered throughout the years, and additional $25 in soft costs. So at $175 a square foot, I would be looking at a cost of $187,000 a door. And anyone familiar with multifamily dwellings know that $187,000 a door is unacceptably high, and the rents wouldn't work anyway. No lender is going to finance that. So ultimately, this project is about creating high-quality, affordable rentals, and that means putting a unit at the front and back of each floor. This is a federal historic tax credit project. We'd be taking advantage of the CHAP tax credit. I have a board that shows some of our work, including work immediately across the street. The top 3 photos are of 1106 Harlem Park, which is obviously a difficult neighborhood, and these are rental, a rental unit. 426 Mosier, which is right across the street, is the upper right-hand corner. We will be making the same selections at 1426 as we made at 426 Mosier. And the bottom row is of 1311 West Lombard Street in Union Square, Hollands Market. I'll note a few other factors that I'd like us to keep in mind. These projects, if this project is to move forward, is to be approved, we'd be seeing a groundbreaking in January of 2019, approximately a year from now. The housing market may not be the same a year from now. Interest rates are already going up. We have a mature market. It's very easy to speculate about things continuing forever and ever. However, house prices in Baltimore City have been rising since 2010. One needs to be realistic about what can be done. I think that having these houses look like 426 Mosier helps my investments of $450,000 to date on that block, and our $910,000 investment at 1401 McCullough Street, because it helps reduce crime, and it also brings in 21 individuals who are going to go to coffee shops and go to work and go to school and look out and make sure that people aren't trafficking drugs at the corner. So I'm excited about this property. I think that it meets the requirements of the variance insofar as we face constraints because the properties are historic, because they're large. I can't reduce the footprint. I can't move windows. I can't move walls. These properties, once put back into service, will, as is the case with 416 and 426 Mosier, be some of the most attractive properties in the immediate vicinity. I think I'll pause there for now.
You spoke before about the rents and the rent levels that you believe that wouldn't be supportable. What are your plans for the rents at, I guess, as designed here?
Thank you for asking that question, Mr. Chairman. I was remiss in not addressing that. We're proposing 10 one-bedroom apartments, 10 two-bedroom apartments, and 1 3. There's been some expression of interest in the community to see even more twos. And if that's feasible, we may pursue it by expanding on the third floors where there's half floors. I'm not sure that's financially viable, but as scheduled, we're proposing $1,000 rents for 1 bedrooms, which we feel we can justify internally, although it's a little bit difficult to do that based on rental comps. $1,200 for 2 bedrooms and $1,350 for the 1 3-bedroom. And I would repeat again that that's 20% lower than what we pro forma'd at 1401 McCullough Street.
How did you arrive at 21 units?
So there's constraints when one pencils out a project. You have to have windows for bedrooms. We need to have a central corridor. Where's that sign? We have to have a central corridor for fire exit. There really aren't too many permutations that are allowed. We cannot demolish the demising walls, former demising walls between the four structures. Federal historic tax credit wouldn't permit that, and that would add incredibly to the costs. So really, it's whether one or two is the question. We actually had, this is really the least density that we can go forward with. We actually contemplated and worked with our architect to do English basements so that we would have additional units in the basements that would bring the density parallel to what this board granted October 10th for 3400 Auchentrolley. I will note briefly that 3400 Auchentrolley has 60%, this property has 60% greater lot area and twice the floor area.
I'm looking at your floor plan. I see that pretty much the same floor plan on the 3 floors, except that on the 3rd floor, on the rear of the, you only have apartments on the rear of the first building, not that is the corner building, but not on the backs of the others. Are there any spaces there? Are those staying vacant? Or what's in that area? Or
so what we're proposing at present is to leave those as there's be a 3-story structure at the front of those 3 buildings and a 2-story at the rear. However, there's been a request made by some to enlarge some of the units so that there could be more 2-bedrooms, and that's something that I'm open to. I don't know if those numbers will work.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, for the record, for the fellow, just so you're clear, any prior appeal that this board may have approved has no bearing on this appeal whatsoever. Those are 2 entirely separate.
Understood.
All right. Anything further this time?
Not at this time.
Okay. Sir.
Actually, I apologize, but there's someone here to speak.
Oh.
And she's been waiting patiently.
Yes.
So would you, I'll ask Marty Petrelli, the CHAP ARC representative and resident on the 1300 block of Druid Hill, to come up.
Sure. We'll get sir.
Hello, board members. My name is Marty Petrelli. I am a resident of Marble Hill. I have lived there since 2011. I am a historic preservationist. I'm a planner, and I've been working very hard to save civil rights landmarks in our neighborhood. I work very closely with my neighborhood association and with Baltimore Heritage Foundation. I'm in favor of this 21-unit conversion. And it, I really had to look closely at these plans and talk to a lot of people about this, but this is what I've come up with, and this is why. These are really large buildings. And at 5,000 square foot each, it's just not feasible that we're going to be able to renovate them into single family. We have to be realistic here. I'm all about home ownership, and I'm all about decreasing density. However, with a 5,000 square foot house, if you have 4 people, if you have 4 houses, you're really not increasing the density that much. Those houses could easily support 20 to 30 people. So having 21 apartments to me isn't that much of an increase in density. Parking's not an issue because he has a parking lot. There's also copious amounts of vacant lots around the corner for people to park in. And all other issues that are around high density are really not a factor here, such as crime. These are market rate rentals. They're going to attract professionals, young people, artists, MICA students, and this project could breathe incredible vitality into this block, which is a complete eyesore. And I see these buildings being renovated to CHAP standards and just being a real architectural landmark in this block. As far as Dan, worked very closely with him over the last several years. He's more like a friend, a neighbor. He's very involved with our neighborhood association. He heads committees, and he throws himself into community projects. I know he's just a really great guy. He's not like a developer that's just come into our neighborhood and is taking control. He works with us, and he does what we want him to do. And, excuse me, I have a cold. As far as this project is, we have to be reasonable here. These are really large buildings, and this block is a complete eyesore. And I think that the choice is to do nothing, and that these buildings will continue to sit and fall into further state of disrepair. They're very, very vulnerable to arson. We've lost several buildings in the neighborhood in the last few years to arson. PS School 103, which is Thurgood Marshall School, was completely burned down and is now being resurrected. And right behind Dan's project, a 200-unit St. Vincent's Hospital burned to the ground. You may have heard about these fires. We have a lot of homeless people, and they seek shelter in these vacant homes in our neighborhood. They're very vulnerable to arson. And I don't want to see these buildings after they've been stabilized. Excuse me. After we've spent so much money stabilizing them, to have them, set on fire by vagrants or homeless people. So, the choice is to do nothing, and I don't think that's a viable choice. And, I think if anybody can make this project succeed, it's Dan. He has a great track record. He's a good neighbor. He's a good friend, and he's a very talented developer. And whatever he has to do to make this work. The other thing I just want to say is, the front of the houses are going to look like 4-row homes. It's going to look exactly historically perfect. And he's made access to the back for trash. So there's not going to be trash issues. He's going to have a dumpster in the back. It's not going to be visible from the street. So, the issues of density I'm not concerned with them. And as far as crime or concentrated poverty, these are market rate rentals. These are going to be professional people who are just going to breathe a lot of life into this block. So for those reasons, I'm supporting this project.
Okay, thank you. All right, is that it, sir? All right, sir.
My name is Atiba Nkrumah. I'm the president of the Marble Hill Community Association. I also sit on the board of the Upton Planning Committee.
If you could spell that last name, sir.
Nkrumah is Nkrumah. Again, I am here with some 17 stakeholders in the community who all stand in opposition to the project. We have met with Mr. Midvedi over the period of the last 6 weeks in discussions about this project. It just came to our attention in that time. We were unaware of it before that. Just to give Mr. Midvedi's background and his association with the association, as it was already stated that he is a member of the association. He, in fact, sits on the board of the association. We know that he has done other development, of which we are aware that some of the residents where that development has occurred have problems with his maintenance, his ability to maintain the properties in a way that is comfortable for the neighbors. They feel that his management is poor, to say the least. However, because we have looked at the development as a project of density, where Mr. Midvedi has said that this is the variance that he seeks, density.
So that we're clear, the variances that are being sought are for required lot size and motor vehicle and bicycle parking.
Okay.
Chairman?
Continue. Yes, Mr. Midvedi.
Planning has provided the exemption for parking already.
Okay.
That would be how that gets satisfied, but yes. All right.
Okay, so the variance we understood was in terms of the density. You're saying that that's not the case?
Well, the lot size.
The lot size.
Is density.
Is density. The lot size is density, okay. And that was our understanding.
So to speak.
Okay. And so we look at it as a project that is going to bring greater density to our community. Within that 2-block area, we already have in the 1500 block on the opposite side of Druid Hill, they are all multifamily dwellings that bring density, to that section. Also, when we go down into the area of the 1300 block, there is a property called 1313 Druid Hill, which is being sought for development. Again, that would be multifamily or multi-units density. Because in the past, extending back to 2004 when we did our first master plan in Upton, we were projecting an area of home ownership. We wanted to bring home ownership back to the area. In our last master plan, that stays the position that we want to be primarily, or we intend to bring more homeowners into the area. We feel that this would discourage home ownership. I think that we'll have some other folks who will speak who live on the property who feel that it will also impact upon the value of their properties will be affected negatively by this. We also think that in our meetings with Mr. Midvidi, and we've had 7 various meetings that I have been a part of, including a meeting with the board of the association, a community meeting, the Upton Planning Committee Developers meeting, and the community development meeting. We have met with neighbors on the block of the 400 block of Mosier Street who are in opposition. We have pulled in our community meeting, we had 13 folks who filled out forms in opposition. We had 1 abstention though. We also feel that we have been kind of hoodwinked in the process. We know that Mr. Midvidi has been in the community for more than 5 years. He has been a member of the association for at least my term of office, which I just ended my first year. He has been a member of the association in that time. When he first did 1401, the intent there never came to the attention of the community in itself. He said he did not have to do that because, again, whatever it was that he implied with zoning allowed him to do what he wanted to do and not come to the community for approval. The past board representation who had met with Mr. Midvidi, I think it was 2 years ago, had gotten an understanding that his intention was to only develop 1 unit per floor, each building that would give at the most 12 units. That was an understanding that they came away with, and they were comfortable with that for the longest time. And as I say, we learned about this project about 6 weeks ago, all right, which is really uncomfortable to us. Mr. Midvidi has been on our board for some time and could have made this known to us. He told us in one meeting that he's known this since August, that this was going to be the project that he was seeking to do, yet we did not find out about it until 6 weeks ago, serving on our board, which we feel is a rather conflict of interest because he has never informed the board that he intended to do this so that the board could have a discussion, in advance, although the board has had a discussion. And so our problem is twofold. One, we realize that our community is opposed to it, all right? 2, we feel that Mr. Midvidi has misled us in doing this. And so therefore, we oppose this, not just, as a community association, but as the neighborhood Upton Planning Committee, of which we are a part of, and also because we feel that Mr. Midvidi often misleads us. I want to say one other thing about Ms. Petrelli. Ms. Petrelli is a representative on the CHAP board, all right? She represents our Architectural Review Committee, which is a committee of the association. Ms. Petrelli has been appointed to that position by myself and approved by the board. She does not speak for herself, all right, on CHAP. She speaks on behalf of the community. Anything that she would represent in the CHAP meeting would have to be something that was endorsed by the community. Her support of this project is an individual support and does not represent anything about the community. I thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jules Dunham Howie, and I'm the co-chair of the Development Committee for the Upton Planning Committee.
Sorry, what's your name again? I don't have
Jules, Jules, Dunham, Dunham, Howie, Howie. And for the record, there was a letter sent from the Marble Hill Community Association. You did not indicate. Did you receive that one? It was sent. We have the email confirmation. So,
We do.
okay, it was not mentioned, so I wanted to make certain that that was a part of the record. I believe very strongly that context is critical, and particularly in this particular instance. This project didn't just happen. While we are hearing about it 6 weeks ago, it's important, I believe, for this committee to understand, as you take into consideration the request before you, how we got here. We got here because 5 years ago, the city actually stabilized to the tune of $100,000 the two end buildings. Where's the building?
We'll bring it.
Okay. If you could. Yeah, where's the big one of it, the blow up of it? You have the big giant one of it? It's behind you. Behind you.
Are you looking for the picture?
I'm using your stuff. Okay. It's behind this one. Here it is. Okay. Good, but I want this one too. Okay. So the city actually put $100,000 of stabilization into these two end buildings. And when they stabilized it recognizing that we needed to preserve it. That was 5 years ago, 2012. It was shortly after it was stabilized, it was sent to one house at a time. And Mr. Midavy bid on it, and he won it. Now, 5 years ago, when he won that project, the community was actually quite excited. So when he says, I would think that the community would be excited about the development, indeed, community is excited about development when they're at the table with the developer and they're a part of helping the developer think about what will actually be an attribute for the community. In this instance, he's had the property for 5 years. And if you look at it, it's deplorable. Look at the steps. They're falling apart. If you are trying to be a good community citizen that says you're a prominent developer in a neighborhood, why would you not invest some of your own resources to just fix the steps? Make it look like something. No, we have to sit there with the blight. And we have to sit there with the blight because this developer says, if I don't have any money, I can't play. Well, we in community actually have a challenge with that. So what did we do? Because we are determined, as you've heard, to redevelop our neighborhood. And we have worked hard as a community to position ourselves for home ownership. We worked for 2 years on a master plan in this community. And Mr. Midavy was at the meetings during the master plan. And we talked about that Marble Hill community needed to be prioritized for home ownership. So he can't claim that he doesn't understand what the values of this particular community are. So here we are. We've garnered, as you heard, $2.8 million to support home ownership in the Upton community. And specifically, $500,000 has been earmarked for home ownership on this very block. So we actually have 8, here's his block, we have 8 of these vacants that are currently underway in the process, 3 that are vacant lots and 5 that are actually buildings in this, right here, this same block, that are actually being renovated and in the process for renovation with core dollars. So the community is committed.
Renovation for what?
It is home ownership. It's every single one of those units that'll be brought on, those 8 will be for home ownership. And we have 2 more right over here across from Henry Harlan Garnett Park that are actually being done right now for home ownership. So we know we're gonna have 10 houses coming right back on line in this particular block that he wants to put the 21 units. So when we looked at that, we said, my goodness, this is more than a 50% increase in density. How can we sustain that, knowing that we have targeted this particular area within the community for home ownership and understanding that that is going to bring stability throughout the whole community? Also understanding that if this 21 units is allowed to happen, within a 3-block radius, we're gonna have 54 rental units. 54 rental units in a 3-block radius is extremely difficult when you talk about parking and trash and all of the ancillary things that come with having all of those folks living in that area. So we actually are very concerned. So, but most importantly, what really concerns me is I believe that this developer is motivated by money. If you heard what he said here today, no other option to go forward because of finance. Cannot get financing to do the property. Limit to investors' appetite to pledging assets for property underwriting. The numbers just don't work. Well, we don't agree. And we don't agree because when you listen to the argument, he has not said anything aside from cost. He has not said anything that's a unique proposition about these 4 houses that are the typical size of houses in our neighborhood that, by the way, we live in. And I can say that.
One clarifying point there. I believe the properties have been consolidated at this point.
Yes, and that's another issue. Yes.
So the question really is not are the 4 structures, or there's something that's unique about those 4 structures. The question is whether or not there's something which is unique about this parcel of land, which, just looking at it, the surrounding area appears to be a typical row house grid area. All of the properties are roughly similar dimensions. However, this consolidated lot is decidedly larger than the other lots around it. So that would make them different from those other.
You're absolutely right, Chairman, and I'm appreciative that you brought that up, because the consolidation was done by the developer's choice. And this developer decided that he wanted to consolidate these 4 properties into one. Now, if that's the case, and you can't get your financing because you've now consolidated those properties, you're saying that if you rule in favor of this, you're basically saying that the developer's undue burden, which was self-imposed by the consolidation, now has to be borne out by the community. And the community has to deal with that because from this developer's perspective, the only thing that could be done is 21 units. But from the Upton Planning Committee's perspective, we would love for this developer to release these properties, because we actually have other developers waiting to come and bring them online in another way that is more applicable to what the community would like to see.
I have a question. I didn't hear it in the previous testimony, and you haven't said it yourself, although you just answered it sort of decisively. Is the community opposed to 21 units as a density, or is the community opposed to, are you amenable to any number, or are you opposed to the whole development altogether?
No, we are opposed to the 21 units, which is the density that is being proposed. We are amenable to development happening. We would like development to happen. But the community prior, and I don't know where we are today because we haven't polled on this, prior they were willing to accept no more than 12 units, okay? And that was at a rate of 3 per building. In terms of the square footage that's been mentioned, and the 1,500 square feet, and the cost, which is just unbelievable, $75 a square foot, my Lord. But outside of what is being projected that we consider to be really inflated numbers, we understand
that— Do you have a background in construction, ma'am?
Actually, do I have a background in construction? No, but I work with a group of contractors, because I'm the chair of the development committee for Upton Planning Committee, and we have a host of contractors that work with us that actually took issue to that when he came and presented to us on December 1st.
Okay. Do you have a sense of what comparable development costs are?
what comparable development costs are on that particular. We have a couple of developers that are here that have done in that block that could actually speak to that. I do not want to speak to that because that's not my lane, and I understand that. But we do have a couple developers here who have developed in our community, and they can share with you what their comparable costs would be. And I would recommend that they do that for you. But we actually do believe that there is another option of how this particular corner could be developed, where it will not be such a dense development with 21 units. And then we do have to mention that if you allow this to move forward and we have 21 units, you have to think about, people said there wouldn't be an issue with parking. There absolutely would be an issue with parking when we're bringing on 10 more units with homeowners that are going to have vehicles as well in these blocks. And then there are only 8 allocated parking spaces with this particular unit. And so, again, if you just had everybody who rented had a car, that's 21 vehicles. But in many instances, people have more than one vehicle per household. And how do I know this? Because I actually live on the 1400 block of McCullough Street, and I renovated a 4,000 square foot brownstone, and I understand how much it cost me to do what I had to do, which wasn't on par with what he's saying his costs are. But I also understand that people do want to live in large homes. And so the fallacy that you're not going to be able to develop these homes as a single-family home and market them is just that. Because they absolutely can be developed and marketed as a single-family home. And I don't know, me, my husband, and my 9-year-old, we live quite well in 4,000 square feet, and sometimes we think it's not enough room. So lastly, what I would like to say is that there's a real credibility problem, and I don't know if you all take that into consideration, but when you have development in community, you have to actually feel like you're going to be able to work together with those people in community. And this developer, every time we hear him, there's another story. Every time he talks about this project, it's another configuration. We were told in our meetings that it was going to be 15 one-bedroom units, 3 disability units, 3 two-bedroom units. When we come here, it's a whole different configuration. And at another meeting, it's a different configuration. So what do you believe? So when you have a person that is constantly changing the story, moving the goalposts, and not being transparent and clear with community, naturally, that's why you have 17 community members who come out to a meeting, because they don't trust this particular developer. And quite frankly, we don't believe that he's going to do what he said he was going to do, because he said if you awards this to him, he's only going to put 20% Section 8 in here. That has not been his track record, and we actually believe if he's awarded this, we're going to end up with 21 units of Section 8 in our community. And that is what we have up the street, and we want to have a different demographic in our neighborhood. And we have to have a different demographic in our neighborhood for sustainability purposes. I thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Councilman Eric Costello, 11th District, Baltimore City. I just wanted to add one thing. When Mr. Tanner was reading my letter, specifically what's included in the code, as I know you all are intimately aware of, so please do not take offense at this. The required findings, among others, include 1, existing hardship because of the particular physical surroundings, shape, or topographical conditions of the specific structure or land involved. Number 2, that the findings are unique to this property and are not generally applicable to other property within the same zoning classification. Number 3, that the unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty is caused by this code. Number 4, that the purpose of this variance is not based exclusively on a desire to increase the value or income potential of the property. And number 5, the variance is in harmony with the purpose and intent of this code. I think from listening to what I've heard this afternoon, it is very easy to see that the proposed developer has not provided justification that is consistent with the code for the first of those 3 items. As to the 4th item, I find it entirely reasonable that the view of the community is that this proposal is made in order to maximize value. Now, I can't fault Mr. Midvedi for that. I don't think that there is anything wrong with that whatsoever. He is operating a business. He is looking for an acceptable return on investment for himself and for his investors. Nonetheless, that is not consistent with the code. And I think it's important to point out that on the fifth item, the purpose and intent of this code, it would be very difficult to reasonably prove that, considering that the City Council recently did an entire overhaul after 45 years for the first time of the zoning code, which went into effect on June 5th of 2017. I'm not going to speak to any of the personal issues, but I will say that the Upton Planning Committee went through great lengths to undertake that master planning process. Widespread community participation. Very proud of what Upton was able to accomplish in that 2-year period. Went out and sought private funds to make that happen, much of which came through Wells Fargo. They have been very active in terms of attracting core dollars from the state in order to redevelop the neighborhood in a manner that is consistent with that master plan.
Mr. Councilman, there was some discussion about that by the last witness. You familiar enough with that program to go into what exactly is going on in the surrounding area?
In terms of the master planning process, Mr. Chairman, or in terms of other development in the Upton catchment area?
I would say both.
Are you referring to court? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Not intimately with specific figures or specific addresses.
But, well, not looking for that level of specificity, but as far as just generally sort of where do things stand with redevelopment in this area, particularly there was testimony regarding redevelopment activity even on this block.
I can speak to the project at 1313 Druid Hill Avenue. I believe this board approved some type of entitlement for that property. That's Aziz Husseini. He's looking to do, off the top of my head, I want to say, I thought the number.
One at a time.
I thought the number was 19 or 21, but he's looking to do shared artist housing in conjunction with MICA. But as to
that would be
shared common space with individual studio type or efficiency type units within that property. Now that property has gone vacant for 35, 40 years now, and 16 units. Pardon me, my mistake.
And those are apartments?
Yes, and that's market rate. Efficiencies and/or studios at 1313 Druid Hill Avenue, known as the home of the Unfriendlies, I believe. Home. Okay. Again, not intimately to the details.
That's fine. Okay, please continue.
But either way, and Mr. Chairman, I have great respect and appreciation for your knowledge of the zoning code as well as the commissioners. I would respectfully argue that while the consolidation of the 4 properties does in some way make the property unique, nonetheless, I don't believe that based on the current zoning code, which requires 750 square feet of lot per dwelling unit, that math changes the extent to whether or not this is unique. If one were to divide out the total lot area, which is 7,850 feet, amongst the 4 properties relatively evenly. I'm sure it's off, as Mr. Midvidi said. Some of those properties are 19 feet 6 inches wide, some are 20 feet 2 inches wide, so I'm sure the square footage with 65 foot length is rather comparable amongst the 4. I would argue that that is, in my humble estimation, that does not make this property unique. Again, we have what's allowed under the current code, which is 10 units, going up to 21. I will say that I called Mr. Midvidi yesterday to give him a courtesy heads up, as I would do with any developer when I'm opposing a project. I also spoke with one of Mr. Midvidi's investors yesterday and explained that I was disappointed at the decision to go forward with this hearing. I was hopeful that there was some opportunity for compromise. What that compromise could look like, I don't know. I've heard 21 from Mr. Midvidi. I've heard 12 from the community. I don't know, and I'm not going to suggest that compromise is possible at this point, as evidenced by the fact that everyone is here to fight this, unfortunately. So, all that being said, you know, I'm disappointed that we're here and that there isn't a compromise. And I am disappointed, frankly, at the extent to which the developer has worked with the community, specifically on this project. I'm not going to go into past performance or past projects. I will be the first to say that I don't know where the poster board is. I'm not going to look for it. We all saw it. Mr. Midvidi does do a quality product. There's no question about that. But again, this project is inconsistent with what the master plan has indicated that the community is looking for, that the community has already made progress on taking major significant steps towards getting funds in place through CORE and other private sources to help achieve that goal of increased home ownership in the area. And with that, I would humbly request that you deny this appeal. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Anyone else?
May I just make a couple technical corrections? This is actually 3 lots that were consolidated. The first 2 lots had been previously consolidated years ago. That was the corner property, the first 2. And then that was 40 feet wide. The other 2 are 20 feet wide, roughly. So it was 3 lots that were consolidated. The other question I have is is about bicycle parking spaces. Are you really seeking a variance for the parking of bicycles? Because I think there's ample area on the site to provide it. And I don't know why you would need a variance.
So I could address parking. However, I think that matters, the parking issue is largely dealt with the exemption that we've received from the planning department.
Not exemption of bicycle parking spaces.
Yeah,
automobile parking.
Yeah,
spaces.
we'd be happy to provide bicycle parking spaces. I did not seek relief from that, as far as I'm.
It was cited as an issue for the board to determine a variance on, and I just don't think it's necessary.
Nor do I.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. My name is Rochelle Matheson. I am a homeowner on the 400 block of Mosher Street. My home is located right here at 417 West Mosher. I'm about a half block from the proposed development. I'll make my statement brief. I did email this to the people listed at the top, but I will provide it to you as well. Myself, along with the majority of homeowners on the 400 block of Mosher, are opposed to this development. We feel it will be too high density. With the exception of Mr. Midvidi's 2 rentals here, all other homes on the 400 block of Mosher are home-owned. These are all single-family homes. 5 of the homes have families in them, including myself with young children. I also want to note that this is an error. 421 is occupied by Ms. Marion. She's here in attendance. And my statement is just that we oppose it. I oppose it because of the high density. 21 units is going to be a lot of people. It's going to create a lot of traffic, a lot of cars, a lot of low-income renters that don't have an investment in our community. And that's not what we're trying to build in Marble Hill and in Upton. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for hearing us. I too submitted a letter to this committee, which I have a copy of right now.
Your name, please.
My name is Teresa Stevens, and I'm a resident of the 400 block of West Mosher Street. I live at 418. I've been living there since 2009. I live between both of the rentals that Mr. Midvidi renovated. Renovation is nice. However, in our case, we like historic character, such as the pocket doors, the high ceilings, things to remain that give some of the feel. Our neighborhood is historic. The block that we live on was the home of Henry Hall, who donated a lot of the aquarium fish to start the first national aquarium in Baltimore, along with a number of other issues or historic prominent persons that lived in our community. We are not opposed to rental. We want diversity. A lot of the folks in our community remember the day when you couldn't tell who did what in what home, whether it was a person that did days work or principal of a high school. We want to see growth. However, we've been through a number of years and a number of conversations with the developer, which at some point change every time we speak with him. In our community, 17 units, 1300 block of Druid Hill, 50 plus units, possible 1400 block of Division with Carver Hall, which is very attractive, very historic, cannot be demolished. 1500 block of Division, 20 units. 500 block of McMecken, 112 units. 1800 block of Division with Community Builders, 72 units, all rental, all within 3 to 2 to 1 block of this property. Our neighbors have picked up trash. We've witnessed accidents. It's terrible at this corner. We sit in a neighborhood with Bethel AME Church, New Metropolitan Baptist Church, Immaculate Conception, right there on the corner. On Sundays and Wednesdays, if you're not familiar with church traffic, it's very tight in our community. To add 21 units in addition to what we have and what is proposed is not a good idea. And I really hope that you consider opposing this request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dina Rodriguez-Tillman. I live on the 400 block of Mosier. I met Mr. Mivity when he first came to our block and told the families on our block that he was moving there. And then he proceeded to ask us if we would be okay with him making a 2-unit. And we told him absolutely not. We have families here. It is a very small block. If you're not familiar with the 400 block of Mosier, there are 14 homes and 10 of them are homeowners. I have 2 young girls. He proceeded with his development. He did not make 2 units. He also did not move there. He placed a family there. And that was the beginning of our experience with Mr. Mivity as a developer and as a renter. Mr. Mivity broke the law for his tenants, or for himself, may I add. He brought in propane tanks when his Section 8 tenants lost their electricity and violated whatever they had to go through with Section 8 to reside there. That was definitely a concern for us because we live in small row homes, and he didn't care. He didn't care about us, about our families. He was fine with endangering us as long as he continued to profit from his rents. After that, he developed another home, which recently has been a lot of activity for police. One situation in general, the renter, by the way, I don't know how many people are supposed to be at the other home on our block. Maybe 13 people as of right now. I'm not sure. We lost count. It was so disruptive that there's been a lot of domestic disputes, a lot of issues with his tenants, and it got to a fork in the road where the police were called. There were several cop cars out, and his tenant proceeded to ask the police to shoot him that he did not care. He'll go to jail, and his tenant was egging the police on to shoot him. The police, of course, behaved professionally and controlled the situation. We have asked his tenants to pick up after their children or their children to pick up trash, and we've received death threats from his tenants. We let him know about this issue during our meeting, and he said he was unaware, but that we should let him know what his tenants are doing. And for me, you know, our tenants have gotten their tires slashed. There have been death threats. There's been a lot of issues. So it becomes a situation where I'm very grateful that there are 10 homeowners on my block that look out for me. I work till very late hours. Last night I came home at 10 o'clock and my neighbor said, "Dina, don't worry, I'll watch you come in." Now my concern is that this project is going to move my neighbors away. I came from Washington, D.C. I lived in Georgetown. I came to Marble Hill with my husband. We got married, and we were going to move. We did not want to stay in Baltimore City, and we had small children, and we were looking for a house in Howard County. But I was fortunate enough to have wonderful neighbors, amazing people, so I decided to stay. They advised me on where to put my children. They helped me with anything I need for my children, and it has been an amazing place. I have lived in New York, I have lived in Washington, D.C., and there has not been one place where I have lived where I know all my neighbors. So it is an amazing place where you see blight, where I see amazing people. And we're gonna continue to grow. We recently had a family that moved from Pennsylvania. My next door neighbor came from Germany. My neighbor across the street that purchased the Henry Hall house, she came from California. People are moving here. This is not blight. This is not what he sees. Or this situation is not what he wants to throw the picture to you guys to see. This is a community of families, amazing people. We've had gatherings. They come to my home for dinner. There are amazing people here that don't deserve to have what he is proposing. I'd rather see the blight than see what he's already contributed to our community. We want development, we want responsible development. We want people who care about our community. We ask that he consider to give something for his tenants that would make them want to stay. A community space, perhaps. Better parking, maybe gated community. Perhaps a concierge. He's not offering any of those things. He's offering his highest profit with solely based on Section 8. Now, I'm not against Section 8. I grew up in Brooklyn. I am a product of Brooklyn. And if you know Williamsburg in the 80s, it was this. Worse, you know, and now it is established and flourishing again. And that is what's going to happen here. So we ask that you support us in this, and we ask that you deny this for him, because we want to stay. We want safety, and we want to move forward. So that's how I feel about it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eric Brown. I am a resident of 400 block of Mosier. I reside at 419 Mosier. I guess out of the residents here, I'm one of the long homeowners there. I've been living there, owning my home for the past 28 years. I'm one of the few residents can tell you, I remember when that was an apartment building, folk residing there.
When was that?
That was back, I moved in there in 1989, June. That was all the way up into, I would say, about 92. That's when it started going down. For one, we're not against development, but we're against a development when you're gonna put 21 rental units there. The 400 block of Mosier is unique. You can travel from Martin Luther King Boulevard all the way to North Avenue. That's the only block that has residential. From Martin Luther King to North Avenue. I raised my family there. When I moved there, my daughter was 6 months old. My daughter would be 28, December the 16th. And I have a son that will be 26 on the 20th of December. And also I have one that's 36. When I moved in there, I looked at the block, I like the ambiance with family, and I purchased that home from Marion Blackwell. And I'm against the proposed 21 units at 1426 Jewel Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marion Blackwell, and I have lived in historic Marble Hill for 50 years. I have seen this neighborhood go through many, many challenges. Originally, when we moved in, my family and I moved in Marble Hill, it was pretty much a Black community. But one of the things my husband and I did was focus on home ownership. Some of the people that are sitting here in this audience here today became homeowners. Stephen McKay, Atiba, Jules, a number of people. We would literally go out and recruit homeowners. To date, I can lay claim to bringing 7 homeowners to blighted buildings, development that was underwater, homeowners doing renovations on credit cards. I currently own a building on the corner of 429 Mosier Street, which I've been trying to develop, which was in horrible condition. It had been vacant for almost 28 years. I guess I was crazy enough to take on a project like that. But it's been difficult finding financing, and that was because of the blight in the 1400 block, this particular buildings that are affront my buildings. So out of my personal pocket, I had to spend $170,000, still struggling, trying to get the building done, and for part of it to be used for community use and development. When you talk about dollars and cents, and you talk about Baltimore City, the important issue here is quality of life. Many of the problems, I am a social worker. I work for the Department of Juvenile Justice, Child Protective Services, community organizing, you name it, I do it. One of the problems I find in Baltimore City is the quality of life issues. That's why we have what we have, because of the poor quality of life. It's not about the bottom line. I do understand from developing 4 homes myself and then turn them over to home ownership. That wasn't about the dollars, but it was about creating a community. We also went for the designation as a historic district. Even though it's not talked about in Baltimore City, historic Marble Hill in Upton is one of the largest and the most significant historic district in the United States of America. But we are constantly plagued by the do-good developers who want to come in, look at their bottom line, and we are left with the mess. We do want to see development. We are not opposed to apartments. We are looking for all types of individuals to move in the community because I think a diverse community is good. Seeing what I'm going through with my building, $170,000, that was most of my retirement. I'm a retired state worker, a social worker. I don't have a lot of money. And I'm still looking at $200,000 to drop. If I made the investment underwater, if my neighbors made the investment underwater, well, guess what? That's the way the game flows in Marble Hill. But we stand tall and we stand together when it comes to protecting our community. That is why I'm asking that this development not go forward, because it's a quality of life issue. It's the preservation of an African American community, which even Baltimore City doesn't give its full value to. So once again, being the old timer in the community, living there 50 years, investing in the community association, bringing in at least 7 homeowners, I'm thinking, give us a break. Who is concerned about us and our financial standards, and now that we are underwater because of developments like this? Thank you.
Thank you.
You know what, I said I wasn't going to do this, but I feel compelled. Go ahead.
One more thing. I used to be the architect review person, and I nominated the district for local historic preservation. And doing my research, I found out that the 1432 N buildings, these two buildings, which at one time had a carriage house, that was dismantled. We knew nothing about it. It was a one-day process. These two buildings once belonged to a J. Logan, can't remember his last name, senior moment, who was a major mayonnaise manufacturer in Baltimore City. His mayonnaise was sold all over the country, and it came from out of those two structures. In the basement level, which was a grocery store, and much of the work was done in the carriage house. And in those days, carriages were in the bottom, and people stayed up in the top, and sometimes little businesses were going on. So that business, so those two buildings are historically significant, because just this was back in the 1930s and 40s when we supposedly didn't have opportunities. But in that quadrum and in Marble Hill, you would find up to maybe 800 businesses. So I'm asking you to really celebrate this community. And a quality of life, as most of you are, I'm quite aware, is not always dollars and cents. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kelly Singleton, and I have lived in the 1400 block of McCullough Street since 1982, when my mother and father purchased the home. And it was an eyesore then, and they went through there gutting it and doing what they needed to do. And my father, Miss Marion Blackwell, Miss Steva, Mr. Atiba, were the founders, I believe, of creating it a historic district, Marble Hill. Am I correct? So, yes, the homes are big. Yeah, they big. I still live there. I raised my two girls there. My parents brought my brother there. There is history there.
You can address your comments here, please.
I'm talking to everybody. So not just him, not just you guys, but my neighbors, my community that helped me, that helped raise me, that helped raise my girls. And by no means, I work with Section 8 recipients every single day of my life. I work with single mothers. I'm on my way to a mentoring class tonight so I can mentor them. 21 units is a lot. My daughter sits in our den and gets scared when she hears a gunshot coming from Druid Hill Avenue. I've walked outside of my door to see people doing their transactions of whatever. And I had to ask them, please get up off of my steps or be mindful of when I'm walking home at night. People in Washington, D.C. would love to have a single family home like this. They move here from D.C. to inhabit single family homes of this stature, of this character, of this historic, just history that's ingrained in the wood of the planks that he's saying every one of them needs to be removed of. That's fine. You got to do what you got to do to make it work. But what you don't have to do is saturate our community with such people that are in despair. Again, I don't have a problem with Section 8 housing. I don't. But when you infiltrate us, McCullough Homes, Pleasant View Gardens, slum landlords that don't live in the community because they can drive home to their big mansions in Harford County, Howard County, Hunt Valley, on the edge of Pennsylvania, they don't know what we have to deal with every day when we're scared to bring our children home because of what's going on in the community from the recipients or the tenants of these slumlord homes, or trying to find a parking space because the 5 churches that are in the neighborhood have brought in their congregation members and there is no parking. So now, one house can have 2 cars, This young man wants 21 units. That's maybe 42 people. Because if I'm a single mother with 2, most of the people I work with, young women, have about 2 to 3 children. It just won't work. And then they have cars. That means parking. That means crime. It just doesn't work for us. So there is a way that we can come to a common ground. I don't know the numbers. I don't know. I'm not financial like that. So what you need to do is really consider the families and the people in this community and hear what it is that we have to say in terms of, yes, we want our community to be uplifted. We don't want the destruction and the blight in our neighborhood and right outside our front door or out our back door. We want it to be attractive to people that want to come to this city and work at State Center, work at Johns Hopkins, work as a principal at a school that's in the neighborhood. But we don't want more crime, more death, more drug dealing, and no parking. We don't want that. So you guys have a good night, because I said I want.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Norma Green. I'm Vice President of the Upton Planning Committee and Co-Chair of the Housing Committee for the Upton Planning Committee. And I would like to state that the Upton Planning Committee stands in support of the Marble Hill Community Association in not wanting to go along with this project. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're going to cut it off there, folks, because we're getting a lot of repetition. But
he's the developer with numbers.
Mind if I have real quick?
5 minutes.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Fred Tillman. What makes this important to me is I have a property on the 400 block of Mosier Street also. And again, we're all concerned. Everybody's upset. I think what really gets me is that we're sitting here and we're listening to so much opposition from everyone in the community for this project to go ahead. It just seems, it just doesn't seem logical. But what I wanted to get through is when I first heard about this, we had our first meeting at one of the residents, Rochelle's house, and Dan Midvedy was telling us the numbers. And he was going through the numbers and telling us what he was planning on doing, the density of Section 8 that he was planning on putting in the property. So just based on the numbers that he mentioned and was telling me about, I did a quick calculation. Mind you, let me give you a little background. I dealt with a property at do real estate. I did a property, a 27 unit, at the corner of Brookfield, Whitelock, and Reservoir Hill. Bunch of properties from Harbor Bank. I dealt with Harbor Bank on Callow Ave. So I have a little bit of experience dealing with numbers on large apartment buildings. So Dan gave me a number, and I'll give you a little background on the building. The developers at the Brookfield Whitelock, the 27 unit, went to the community association, told the community, yes, we're going to get in. We're going to only put in 20%, same number you used, 20% Section 8 density in the properties. By the time it was all said and done, the consultant that was brought in to actually fill the buildings was actually up over 55%. But no one knew, just for the simple reason that once the developer gets in the building, they start to rent the property out, no one knows what the numbers actually are. So we dealt with that. So back to the meeting that we had the other night, Mr. Mills gave us the numbers, quick calculation, and I told him, your numbers are wrong, they're not true, they're skewed. There's no way that you're gonna spend $2.25 million to make a few $1,000s a month. Well, at that point, the numbers he gave, it was kind of a rough calculation. So somebody puts up, or a developer or investors put up, if I was an investor and I put up $2.25 million on a project, there would be no way my return would only be a couple thousand, few $1,000s a month. That's no return for $2.25 million. So we're back to a little more calculation, and I don't know what type of tax credits he's going to get, in the beginning. I don't know about the management. So I'm pretty sure if he's going to do a management company, he's probably going to create a management company. He probably already has one and pay himself to do the management. But from as you've heard tonight and this afternoon, management is not his thing. So he's going to manage a property that's going to probably within a year be a very big eyesore to the community. So that is what we need to look at we have everybody. This is personal. People live in the communities. The development that's going on in the community. We even have a developer here. She's doing properties on the 1300 block, same size properties that is being made for home ownership. That's the way forward. Mr. Mivety has told everyone basically there's no other way forward. This is it. We're going to do a 21 unit. That's the way it is. His choice, again, what you brought up was now this property is one lot. That was a choice. When we spoke about it, I said when you buy a property, you make your money when you buy the property. If you bought it wrong or you developed it wrong, or your plan was wrong, then you have to pay the consequences. You can't make a community pay for a mistake that was made in the development choice. So I just wanted to let that be known and let everyone know that the numbers that he's giving you and what he's planning on doing cannot work unless he does a majority of Section 8 or a huge portion larger than 20% of Section 8. So I'm in opposition of the project and that development, and I appreciate your time and the extra couple minutes that you gave me, and have a good night.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Midvity. And I'll say this to preface everything. You know, there's been a lot of testimony from the opposition, largely centering on opposition to, well, concerns voiced over subsidized housing that they don't want in their neighborhood. That's not really what we're looking at, though, when we're talking about the variances that are requested here. One thing that I would like you to touch on, because I will imagine you want to respond to the points that were brought up, but if you can also get to the just the bare requirements for a variance, because while I think that you've discussed whether or not the property is unique, I haven't really heard much of a discussion concerning a hardship which requires 21 units beyond just the financial picture. So if you could address that as well, that'd be good.
And I would appreciate any questions the board has that would help me focus my reply. We heard of $2.8 million of core money coming to Upton. The $2 million of the $2.8 million is coming to blocks that are far from this project. They're specific to I believe it's the 800 block of Harlem and Edmondson. There was an award for some home ownership on this block of Druid Hill, and I think that just underscores the need for subsidy and how it's not possible. Core money is limited. In fact, it's unclear that there's going to be a successive round. Word on the street is that they deployed their capital this year because deploying it next year wouldn't be beneficial to an election. Better to deploy it now. So those properties on the 1400 block where there's an existing structure, I just looked at the plat, they're 17 feet wide. They're not 20 feet wide, and there's a $50,000 subsidy. Subsidy is not an answer for everywhere in Baltimore City. Baltimore City has for a long time had a chronic lack of population. We hear about concerns about density on this block. On the side of the street of the subject property, there is currently one occupied house and one store on the far corner. So there's a store, so, excuse me, There's a store at 1400, and the upper floors are abandoned. All the other lots on the street, there is vacant homes. There's one homeowner, and there's vacant lots. There's additionally a church on that block, and it is located at 1420 Druid Hill. Across the street, these are all vacant. Miss Blackwell's properties at 429 Mosier Street. It's been vacant since the late 80s. The early 2000s. Miss Blackwell's property at 1425 Street has been vacant since the late 1980s. All these other properties the properties that are occupied are barely so, and you'll frequently see properties that have been occupied falling into disuse.
Folks,
I believe that this request should be decided on the merits, not on the most volume. And I believe that this is a proposal that is going to bring population into this neighborhood, and that's a good thing. You hear the word density, and it's almost like it's a pejorative. It's all automatically a bad thing. We're not talking about putting a high-rise here. There's plenty of houses in this community that have the current density. There was some issue made of causing the hardship by the consolidation. It's quite the opposite. First of all, as Mr. Tanner pointed out, the corner properties had been consolidated since before the plat maps were drafted. The properties are in fact interconnected at 3 different levels. They shared a common staircase and a common entryway. The reason why we consolidated the remaining properties was to make them easier to develop, not to somehow burden. These properties are very unique. You've heard people mention properties that they've developed. They're not 20 feet wide. Ms. Blackwell spoke a few moments ago. She said she spent $170,000 at 429 Mosier Street. And her house lacks some windows, has peeling paint on the outside, is framed on the inside with subfloor. And she's already spent $170,000. By her testimony, she's done 4 other properties. $170,000, and she says she needs to spend another $200,000. That would be $370,000 for a single-family home that is only 16 feet wide. Multifamily requires sprinklers. You have to bring it up to code. We have to provide parking. We have to provide dumpster service. $175 a square foot is considered very moderate. I've got an appraisal, the executive summary of which I'd like to distribute to the board, for 1401 McCullough Street, where our total development budget was underwritten by Baltimore Community Lending and has led to loan approval. I've had conversations in the context of other multifamily dwellings with the Reinvestment Fund, with Enterprise, with Columbia Bank, with Harbor Bank, and everyone feels our numbers are right. I don't want to get into the personal animus and arguments ad hominem. I'm not going to address those, but I do want to address one thing about being inconsistent or questions of my credibility. I've known Habitat for Humanity for years. I work alongside them on several community boards that I'm on. If my credibility was susceptible to being called into question, they would not twice now provide letters of support for my projects. I'm also a member of the bar in 3 different jurisdictions, and I've had no, since being admitted to practice, I've had no disciplinary action ever initiated or considered. It's insulting, and I'm not going to spend more time on that because that would be a distraction. Mr. Chairman, you asked me to address the requirements for variance, and I would like to go through those one at a time. So 5308A requires a showing of unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty. These properties are really difficult to do. It's not the case that someone's building 100 of these ground up in a row. Every single property, even if they look identical on the outside, when you get into them, this is not a manufacturing line for Swiss watches where you're producing the same one over and over again. Every single one requires a very active level of management involvement, construction project management involvement, planning. There's historical considerations that one has to consider. I've already mentioned we can't reduce the footprint. The windows can't be moved. There's historic methods of construction which have to be respected. This is a business that is a passion. We are a mission-based for-profit developer. Without consideration of the credit, these pencil out to an 8% yield. There's no appreciable hope for appreciation for these properties in the near future. 8% is hardly a slumlord coming in to build some lipstick on a pig solution with linoleum floors and used appliances and cutting every corner possible. We would not have received the Baltimore Heritage 2016 Preservation Award for our preservation work in Marble Hill, in particular for 416 and 426 Mosier Street. No one in their right mind would be in a business of putting the money that we put in to achieve these results to just let tenants come in and destroy the place. We are very selective in our tenant selection. I live locally. I live in Councilman Pinkett's district. I'm less than 10 minutes from these properties. I drive by these properties every single day on my way to work. My office is in Franklin Square. I'm very hands-on in the management, the construction management, basically at every stage. There is not some huge back office that moves this forward. So we're local. It's not going to be sent out for third-party property management, which is very difficult. I've digressed. I want to return to the findings that are required. So there's been some discussion about the motivation or the purpose of the variance not being exclusively on the desire to increase income potential. So there is no income potential. And without income potential, this isn't about profitability, it's about possibility. No one will underwrite these properties unless there's a certain debt coverage ratio, unless they appraise. Real estate requires real estate financing. These properties are not being constructed in Georgetown or in Federal Hill, where there's different rental expectations. People have to pro forma out and look at comps for rental income and for construction costs. Unfortunately, it doesn't cost anything, any less amount of money to develop in these neighborhoods as it would in neighborhoods that can afford a higher, where higher rents are reasonable to be expected. I've heard some criticisms concerning whether or not, because the zoning code was just updated in the last calendar year and implemented June 5th, if any variance whatsoever could possibly be in compliance with the intent of City Council. The City Council intentionally inserted languages for variance. No one planned on dealing away with variance. Moreover, that argument would defeat, if it were adopted, would defeat any variance request. So I think that that argument is not sound. The variance should not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity. What's injurious to the enjoyment of the property in the immediate vicinity and what's injurious to property values is when these properties look like this. So it's not the case that I've had these properties for 5 years and have sat on it. I walked with the current commissioner and Julie Day at these properties, I'm going to say in 2013, and I asked them to do something about These two properties, and finally they stabilized those properties. I don't mean to say that they were slow getting to it. I just, you know, the city does take time and it does have a process. Once they stabilized the properties, they eventually went to auction. They eventually closed, and we moved forward to acquire 2 vacant to value lots. For what purpose? The purpose was we wanted to fence in and have better site control so people aren't cutting through. We wanted to have green space. We wanted to have more parking spaces. We're still the contract purchaser for those properties. They were blocked by some of the opposition you hear in the room today. That, as far as I'm concerned, those I would still very much be interested in addressing the parking and the green space moving forward. But speaking of self-injury as an obstacle to the variance, the opposition's self-injury is that they got in the way of the disposition of 2 vacant to value lots that are under contract, each of which could provide 8 parking spaces, in addition to green space, in addition to tasteful fencing. We obviously do a very tasteful job in our work, and we would likewise do the same thing with these lots. Again, the variance will not otherwise be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, or welfare. Less crime, less blight, people living in houses, people parking, people going to school. There's 21 people that will be occupying these apartments, if not more. These are people that will have jobs, that will go to coffee shops. This is to be celebrated. We have a shortage of people in Baltimore City. How many schools in this district are closing down? I'm on the board of the Roots and Branches Public Charter School. William Penderhughes now is set to be closed down. Why is that? Because elementary students, they can't take buses across town. They have to get to schools that are reasonably proximate, and we have an insufficient number of adequate schools in the area, and they all are facing decreased enrollment and an inability to stay open. So we need more population. Density is a good thing here. The density is something that is going to help property values, it's going to help crime, it's going to help enliven the neighborhood, it's going to make comps so that when someone such as myself is looking to do single family in this area, we can point to a sale that meets the cost without a subsidy. But right now we can't. And these houses are 20 feet wide, 65 feet deep. The idea, one can't put 1 1/3 apartments on a floor, not without cutting things up and adding a lot of costs and other constraints. So it's a choice between 1 or 2 apartments a floor, and 2 barely works. The appraisal that you have now in front of you is evidence of that. Our total development budget at McCullough Street, approximately $900,000, appraisal $670,000. Is there any questions I can answer?
So are you familiar with development in the Oliver neighborhood?
Not intimately.
I am aware of development in the Oliver neighborhood of properties similar to that size that they are selling for single-family dwellings, for home ownership opportunities. How is it that they're working, and markets are similar, demographics are similar, how is it that's working in that situation and it doesn't pencil out in your estimation?
Yeah, so like I said, I can't speak to Oliver. I could speak to the 1400 block of Madison, where in the past 3 years, there's been approximately 5 sales in the $300,000 range. However, those houses are smaller. They're in better condition. They haven't had years and years of neglect. So,
folks,
so this matters. This impacts cost. So once one, I did 426 Mosier Street for $100 a square foot, 416 Mosier Street for about $95 a square foot. A single family, that means you have 1 electric system, 1 plumbing, 1 HVAC. Just that cost alone is $30,000 per unit additional. Then you have to do sprinklers. The costs just keep going up. It has to be an apples to apples comparison. multifamily dwelling per square foot cost at $150 a square foot is quite reasonable. I can't speak to all of her. I can't be an expert in all areas of the city, but you know, we know in Marble Hill that there just are no comps north of $200,000. 1400 block of Madison Street isn't Marble Hill. It's very close, but it's just come online. And as everyone knows, things are block by block, half block by half blocks, one side of the street. So that's how I would address that.
And that's kind of my point of bringing it up is, and we have to be germane to what you're here for as far as the variances. But my quick testimony or commentary on that is a very similar situation in Oliver, that they were very intentional about working block by block, house by house to bring on those comps, to raise the property values. And from the community's perspective, that's where they see the value from their own property values.
So just looking at the map that I have behind me, there's no shortage of homes if one wishes to be in the business of developing row homes for single-family use, for single-family development. There's no shortage of opportunity. If what you say is true in Oliver, I would say, okay, well then how come that hasn't happened here? Why is it that when we've done the underwriting, the core app...
The answer is intentionality. They intentionally decided that that's what they were going to do. They set out to accomplish that very goal.
Okay, well, like I said, I can't speak to Oliver. I can speak to here. There's been this master plan and the prior master plan also prioritized home ownership. The aspiration is not a new one. We do single-family development for sale. It's an aspect of our business. We have a few in the pipeline. We've completed the one here in Holland's Market. However, the city, I mean, there's a reason why the state is offering a $50,000 subsidy to try to make these viable. And by the way, not one of them have sold yet. It's very early on. So is the bank going to underwrite that? I'd be willing to play a role in doing that, but not at these properties. These properties call out for multifamily dwellings, which is what they were. You know, this was a boarding house in the 1880s. The corner two, where there's the consolidation. Any other questions that I can answer?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Off the record?
Yes.
Just use the restroom.
It has been a while.
That's why I wanted that on the record. Hey, I don't care where they put it.
It's very fun.
It's one long term for every 40. It's really one short term for every 12. And it was 7 spaces total. About 7. I didn't. God, wasn't so bad.
You still in the child's house?
Yes. We're getting close.
I was gonna say, you counting down days?
Don't try and prepare yourself, because there's nothing.
I thought about that. Like, what do I prepare about?
Nothing.
Just
Yes, yes. It's like one day you wake up and it's like someone just dumped you in the middle of the ocean.
As I said to you, life as you know it ends.
Somebody the other day, friend of a friend's thing, and they're like, "Oh, so my name's so-and-so." And I said, "What are your hobbies?" I'm like, "Wow, that's all in."
Yeah.
It's like they're about to be, or at least put on hold.
You get one big hobby that's gonna take up a lot of your time.
Or 37 big credits.
Gonna try to do 1231, get tax benefit with no expense.
Wait, only one in there?
Yeah, you gotta get it in this tax year, right?
How long will you be in recess for?
Mr. Barr just went to the bench.
I'm gonna do the same.
Sure. And where's she gonna deliver?
GMC.
It was great. It was great.
Be an infant care class for a whole day.
They don't break.
You'll learn pretty
yes,
quick.
You'll learn. Yes.
On the job
Don't
training.
hold him by the arm.
Yeah, right. A little bit of reason.
On the
but, yeah.
foot.
It's like every pain. Yeah. Wait, is that contraction? It's like, I don't really know because I've never had it.
Had him more. Yes.
I'm like, yeah, but it's in your body. I'm like, I don't know. So,
Wait till she tells you she's going to use 2 words. It's time, and then trust me.
Yes.
we're currently sharing a car.
You're gonna feel contractions.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, Bob.
I have a friend who, he had morning sickness before his wife did with all 3 of their kids. He knew before she did that they were pregnant.
I get headaches when she gets headaches. And so it's like a similar
I was
thing,
clueless.
where it's like pain. It's crazy.
We have our schedule, so it's
Yeah.
which I was pretty happy about.
I kind of wish everything happens like tomorrow. Just like,
That was like the hardest part was the
Wow.
we had like a 4-day.
What do I got?
C-section.
Okay.
Brutal.
Oh, it's Stricker Street.
All right. Were there any that we wanted to talk about?
I'm starting to have fun with it.
Yeah.
Stricker Street.
Stricker?
Yeah.
I was okay with Stricker.
That's over about a 50% variance, but it's bringing those units down to less than 200 square feet. That's awful.
For a room now?
On a room on that block that's trying to build home ownership, and there are some multifamily, there's not.
Well, you know.
Yeah, it's
we're
only
not-
1,500 square feet. I thought 6 was a lot for that size space.
I mean, that's trying to push shoeboxes out the door.
Haven't you ever seen those little house shows?
Yeah, but people do those not out of
Yeah, I-
necessity. They
I
do
hear you.
that because they just want to live that way. And I know this block, that's not what the structure or the dynamic of this block is about either. But I'm a no on that one.
And she was telling about.
David, what could she do as of right? Could she do 4 units? Because somebody said 4 units at some point.
She's doing 4 now, is what she said.
Yes.
A single family, the definition of family allows you to have 4 unrelated
Right.
people.
Yes.
But the minimum is 375 square feet.
And but they have to be living there as a family, sharing household duties and all that
Right.
kind of stuff. So if you have 4 separate separate leases, they're all on their own. It looks like under the current code, it's, is it permitted or conditional? Conditional if it's 10 or less. 10 or less. So that's where the 375 times 4 would be the minimum, the lot size for that. So she's trying to go
She
an
doesn't even
additional
have
2.
that. Right. She doesn't even have the lot size for the 4 that she already has.
I think 4, could always arrange it so she has a single family and have 4 unrelated people living together. And they would have to work out a different lease arrangement maybe, but she wouldn't be prevented from doing that, I don't believe. So I don't know if she got into some kind of enforcement issue because she had.
Well, I asked her that. I thought she said when I asked the question that she had 6 in there now.
Yes.
Yeah,
she
so
did.
somebody
Oh,
drove her
right.
to come
She
to
didn't
the
realize
board.
that she couldn't.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, that sounds right. She doesn't have any clue what the actual requirements are.
No.
I can't get past the 175 square foot rooms. It's half of what the minimum requirement is.
What if it's over 10?
Now, the thing, that she said is that she's got, so that the residents are predominantly elderly people. And I'll agree that the rooms are small and it's a lot of people in the space. The one thing I'd be sensitive to is is that she's providing affordable housing for a market. And while increasing homeownership is a good thing on a macro level, it's not really feasible for a lot lot people.
But there's also a ton of senior housing.
Sure,
Right,
but
in-
you
in that
imagine that
community.
if the people who are living here are people who can't get in there. So, yes.
I wouldn't put my
there's-
grandmother in 175 square feet.
Well.
Make her walk from the
well,
first
you
floor to
have
the
a
second to
choice.
the bathroom.
You have a choice.
Yeah, but
What
she.
if you didn't have a
but
choice?
But that's also just her commentary, so we don't know if that's accurate or
Oh,
not.
sure.
And
You
it's
don't-
also transitory, so we
You
don't
also
know if.
don't know that that's not true.
But we also don't know that next week it may not be predominantly elderly.
Sure, that's also
They may
true.
all pass away this week.
That's certain. Is that possible? Sure. But, I mean, that's really the concern. This sort of dovetails in also, I guess, with Druid Hill, is that, well, there was no one who showed up in opposition to Stricker Street. But,
There's no
with,
entity there to show up.
well, there are neighbors who were there. But, that, the general tenor of Druid Hill is the same, is that really it's just NIMBYism.
There's also a 2-year master planning process.
Well, it may be, but it's a 2-year master planning process that's NIMBYist.
It's not NIMBYist to want home ownership.
Well,
to drive your community.
Well, that's true, but really that was the lip service. What it really all came down to was we don't want Section 8 in our
I get
neighborhood.
it. But there's also an argument to be made by concentrating that much poverty in one building to have 21 Section 8 tenants.
Well, maybe, although that's not what he was talking about doing, particularly given the level of redevelopment that he was looking to put into the building. But, the concern about, you do want to increase homeownership, but looking at the block, look at it from the macro level. The house, and testimony from the one witness that consolidated property was used most recently as a rooming house or apartment building in 1992. That was 25 years ago. The effort, and then the rest of the block basically is vacant except for one property. Even the testimony from the witness who was talking about her own redevelopment efforts in the neighborhood, the point is well taken that she's put in a lot of money herself, but she's not completed. And the properties still remain vacant, and it just sits.
But do you think the redevelopment of this property as presented is going to attract additional investment in the neighborhood?
I know that
that's the appellant's argument.
Well, no, it could, but really what I'm talking about more so is that we're talking about four properties, structures, whatever, although, yes, one was consolidated like 100+ years ago, that have been vacant for about 25 years, possibly a little bit longer. We're talking about the ones that aren't part of the consolidated properties. And so we are talking about those will be now redeveloped and have people living in them, being used for housing, and particularly being used for affordable housing, which in a city with a large number of impoverished residents is probably a good thing for those said impoverished residents. Homeownership is a good thing, but but it can't be at the expense of everything else. But that's just more of an editorializing. My bigger, if we're jumping into Druid Hill, my issue was less about that. It's really just about the hardship. I didn't really hear anything spoken about the hardship.
I didn't see uniqueness either. I think that was created by the consolidation.
Well,
so
I agreed.
Struggling with that.
I don't know that. Well, I think that's actually backwards. That you can't create your own hardship. It doesn't say anything about how a property gets to be unique. It just, the question is it or not? So yeah, it was consolidated. Well, it's just what the statute says. But the you consolidate. I mean, how many different cases have we had? People consolidated lots. Heck, I remember it was the case with the casino. It's the case with most of the large developments. That one that was on somewhere out in Canton, sort of on the border of the Mizod, something with a warehouse or whatever. So you get that all the time with consolidation. The question just is whether or not the property is unique. But as I said, the threshold for me really was, okay, once you get past the uniqueness aspect, then okay, what's the hardship? It's a hardship that's imposed by the code. I get it that developing the properties is difficult, but there's nothing really, there was no hardship really that was testified to. I asked him about, well, how'd you get to 21? And it was really just, well, we put 2 units on each floor of each building, and then you miss the last 5 because there's no 3rd floor there. Although he was talking about maybe building a 3rd floor to use as expanded apartments, but but other than that, there really there was no that's not something that's that there was something that was imposed by the code or that kicks off from the uniqueness of the property. Because I remember with the other one on Auchentrolley, there was the issue with the shape of the property, and you had the hallway, and that really sort of squished things around. And that one I got it. Here I didn't see it.
Yeah, I quite honestly thought the developer made a pretty good case for development of this property, except he didn't meet standards for
that's right.
a variance.
Yes.
Right.
It just didn't get there.
Yes.
The property's not unique. There's not a hardship. It could be scaled back to lesser number of units.
Yeah. And what he said, except for the not being unique part. Yeah.
Any others? Oh, were you fine to let the guy let his hours be cut back from the original?
Bicycle place?
On the bicycle place? Yeah, so 130. Yeah, that's fine.
Different on that one.
the hatchet throwing.
Oh.
I mean, that, in my mind, I just looking at that picture, and yeah, you were right. You know, he's talking about, oh, you know, we're not going to allow alcohol in the throwing area, and she leans
And the
over.
beers are in the
There's
picture.
a beer bottle sitting right there.
It wasn't a good picture to.
Needs some marketing help.
Plus, it
From
didn't
the
really
public
look like that
relations help.
interesting of a place to live. It just looked really Spartan. But no, you know, when I first heard about it, I thought that there were going to be, you know, barriers from, you know, complete barriers along the lane with the exact same thing you're talking about. You know, bowling, you wind up throwing the ball in the other lane. Darts, I've seen people miss the board by
All
several
right, I'll
feet.
show my Republicanism. Let people do what they want to do.
Now it comes out. Well, that's true.
All I know is I wouldn't go to the men's room while they're throwing the axe, because you got to walk past them all, right down the middle, to get
Will I
to
go
the
in
men's.
that axe throwing area? No.
I say my
Well,
vote,
I'm
my
not
vote is
talking
contingent
about-
on David testing it out.
I'm not talking about not allowing it. Just I think it just needs some safety measures.
How do we do that, though? I mean,
Well,
just need to
I
extend
asked
that
him.
middle
I
barrier.
said, yeah. I said, you know, if you extend the fence, so you know, you got that chicken wire that's right there. It goes out. He said it goes out 4 feet from the target, and it stops
well, yeah,
there.
it's divided into, you have a, and from what I gather, you have like two guys or two people
Yes.
throwing axes.
Yes.
Then there's a 4-foot fence, and but
Yes,
on the
between them. But on
between
the
other-
outside,
it goes
yes.
all the way back.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, just have that in between each lane.
Yeah, just separate the barrier.
And then just put something, and then just put a fencing on the back. That's all.
He'll do it.
Yeah, he said he would.
Oh, okay.
To prevent the back.
Yeah, somebody goes, wee! You got an axe going through the bar.
Could wait and see if the councilman makes it back from his trip or not.
That's all. It's an interesting concept. I just think that there needs to be a little bit of safety.
All right,
That's
I can go with it.
If Brandon's willing to go down there and try it.
Well, Austin's a cool
I'm not
town.
going down there.
No, I'm with you on that. They get a little safer anyway.
Any others?
Good luck on the grocery store and the community trying to communicate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those were my only questions.
Okay. All right.
Are we,
Ready,
are
Derek?
we writing in that they have to split the cost of the survey into the
Yes.
decision?
Yes.
They agreed to it.
They both agreed to it.
Yeah, reluctantly, but
It's like after 10 minutes listening to it, the guy says, "Oh, I don't care about it."
Yeah, I know. It's like, well, now you're here. Now I told her it's hers. She doesn't need agreement. Just hire somebody. He's got to pay half the bill. All right, ready?
That's not gonna happen.
I know. 2017-163, 4112 Borman Avenue. I'm a yes.
Yes.
2017-420, 2511 East Fayette Street. I'm a yes with the conditions agreed to between the community and the applicant. Those being, applicant will discourage loitering outside of the store. Applicant will install exterior lighting and video cameras along the side and front of the store. The applicant will install external trash cans, and that the parties will work together to repaint the mural.
Yes.
I think it should specifically say at the shop owner's expense because they agreed to that. If it's not
Is that
clear.
what they said?
Yeah.
they did. My only concern is my gut tells me they have no idea what murals cost.
Yes.
And I've seen murals $25,000, $50,000.
That's right.
So.
That's the
I'm
one
just
reservation
hesitant
with that.
about-
It'd be one thing if there was a specific dollar figure, but the applicant, but the community said, well,
Maybe
we don't
add the
really
word
know.
reasonable in there.
I think there are community funds of
Yeah, there are grants for it.
EQ gives out
mural.
money and
Yes.
others, but
And if they
Yes.
can, they said they're gonna seek the artist that did it the first time. Maybe they can go through that program.
based on what I saw in the picture and compared to what I've commissioned in the past, that was close to a $10,000 mural,
Yeah.
just on the front of the building.
Mhm.
Depending on what the artist actually charged, but
Yeah.
going rate from what I'm
They should
familiar with.
Jeff Field's brother does murals. He teaches at School for the Arts.
Can the board require someone to paint something on one building?
That's why I was a little more amorphous about it.
Oh, but they agreed to it.
I think if it falls through, it wouldn't kill the deal, as long as the community was part of the process and they realize that maybe it's not feasible.
Because that was, in essence, their MOU, and if you exclude that term, then you have not given them full consideration of their agreement.
I agree with you. I'm just concerned about the communication barrier.
Mhm.
I just don't know if they know what they
Yes.
agreed to.
And specifically the cost.
Yeah. I'm really surprised they actually agreed on anything, because the community was so adamantly opposed to them, from what we were hearing. But
How can we? We'll work together to repaint the mural at the the reasonable cost of which will be borne by the applicant.
I think that's fair.
I guess.
Yeah, I know there's something that's about that that's just not there. But, all right. Is that good enough? Okay.
You wordsmith, you.
And I'm a yes?
Yes.
Yes.
2017-425, 1818 Alisana Street was by consent. 2017-428, 2322 James Street was by consent. 2017-430, 1601 through 1617 Bush Street was by consent. Yeah.
With planning
department conditions. 2017-431, 1703 Desoto Road. I am a yes, and the parties will split the cost of a survey.
Yes.
Yes.
Prior to construction of the
May
fence.
they have a happy holiday and.
Yeah. 2017-434, 115 Monastery Avenue was by consent. 2017-435, 1301 through 1325 North Spring Street was postponed. 2017-436, 3327 St. Paul Street was postponed. 2017-438, 1 North Haven Street. First, there's planning department conditions along with that. And I'm a yes with the installation of fencing between the lanes from the target to the area to the rear of the thrower, and then screening off the audience from the throwers.
Yes. You want to specifically say no alcohol in the throwing area?
Yes, and no alcohol beyond the fence.
Yes.
Yes.
2017-439, 1150 North Stricker Street.
You three decide. I'm a no.
I'm a yes.
I'm a no.
You don't, it's done.
I was going to say I'm a yes as to 4.
I'm a yes as to 4. I can't go past 4.
Okay.
Means she's gonna have to lay out money to restructure it, though.
No, they're all just the bedrooms. So use the ones that are on the second and third floors, and don't use the ones that are on the first floor where there's no damn bathroom anyway.
I can live with 4.
I'll take that one.
2017-440, 2322 West Fayette Street. I'm a yes with planning department conditions.
Yes.
Yes.
2017-441, 223 West 23rd Street was postponed. 2017-443, 7713 Everall Avenue was by consent. 2017-444, 5616 Blair Road. There's a posting issue. 2017-445, 511 South Caroline Street. I'm a yes with hours for live entertainment on Friday and Saturday only from, what did it say, 7 until 1:30 each night.
Yes.
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 2017-446, 1426 Druid Hill Avenue. I'm a no. And can we have something in there about NIMBYism?
No, you can't.
What?
NIMBYism.
You can't put that in there.
I'm a no.
Like a first draft, you really have to.
I'm a no as well.
2017-449, 223 Maryland Avenue. I'm a yes with planning department conditions.
Yes.
Yes.
2017-450, 2412 Fleet Street was by consent.
Derek, by the way, this one
445.
died early on and Mike's died
Do
early.
we need to say, to address the no dancing?
Mine didn't die, but all the Word documents.
It wasn't part of the application, but yeah.
The
also
operating system
discussing-
wouldn't support.
We
that
can
one.
mention
So
that
PDF
there
would
is
open,
no
but Word
dance.
wouldn't.
And mine,
Yeah.
I got, it was dying and I clicked on,
Yeah.
and it got to the point I got to the list of cases and I clicked on a case that was black.
Derek, did you get that?
Sir,
On,
jibbery.
No dancing.
address the
Yes.
no dancing part.
Lack of dance floor, not part of application, not part of approval.
No axe handles on the dance floor.
Take all the fun out of life.
Well, I'm sure they do. That's permitted somewhere. You want to go to Alaska? I'm sure they.
Wide open.
Probably
in-
mandatory there.
Wide open in Alaska.